Chapter 45-54. The name of the eternal divine dynasty appeared before the world once again. No one in the primeval realm, the ancestral realm, the human realm, or the heavenly realm had ever heard of such a divine dynasty. This made the strongest beings in the four major realms feel that something was wrong. Could this so-called eternal divine dynasty have come from a great world that no one knew about? Just as everyone was shocked by the origin of the eternal divine dynasty, the battle between the eternal divine Son and Jiyu Ling had reached its climax. The eternal divine Son took out a box. Even with all his might, he had only managed to open the box a little. However, although the box in the eternal Son of God's hand had only been opened a little, a terrifying chilling aura was released from the box. The next moment, the entire world turned into a world of ice and snow, and Jiyu Ling was instantly sealed in ice. Jiyu Fei, who was watching the battle from the sidelines, could not help but feel a little surprised. The box in his opponent's hand was not simple, and he could instinctively sense the extremely dangerous aura coming from it. This thing, Jiyu Fei stared at the box in the eternal divine Son's hand, his pupils constricting. This box seemed to be an eternal Tao artifact. An eternal Tao artifact was a supreme Tao artifact refined by an eternal being. It was even more powerful and terrifying than an ultimate Tao artifact. Could the eternal divine dynasty's divine Son really have come from the legendary supreme world? Boom! At this moment, a loud sound rang out. Jiyu Ling shattered the ice on her body and rushed out. She cultivated the great Tao of fire, and this cold qi was her nemesis. However, on the other hand, Jiyu Ling was also the nemesis of this cold air. Boom! Jiyu Ling's body shook, and 9 balls of divine fire rushed out of her body. They turned into 9 divine phoenixes that circled around her, dispersing all the cold air around her. Buzz! An ancient cauldron appeared above Jiyu Ling's head. From the top of the ancient cauldron, streaks of fiery light fell down one after another. Each streak of fiery light illuminated the world. It was Jiyu Ling's Tao artifact, the 9 Phoenix Cauldron. Take it. The eternal divine Son sneered and patted the box in his hand. In the next moment, the box erupted with a heaven-devouring power that swallowed Jiyu Ling and the 9 Phoenix Cauldron. Jiyu Ling felt her body tighten, and she flew uncontrollably towards the box in the eternal Son of God's hand. Even the 9 Phoenix Cauldron was about to be taken away. Whoosh! At this moment, a blade of light descended from the sky and slashed at the box in eternal Son of God's hands. Clang! Like lightning, the saber light landed directly on the box. The eternal Son of God felt a jolt in his hand, and the box in his hand was sent flying by the saber light. What? Shocked, the eternal Son of God reached out with his right hand to retrieve the box. However, at that moment, a figure appeared in front of the eternal Son of God. The figure waved his sleeve and sent the eternal Son of God flying hundreds of thousands of miles away. The powerful beings who followed the eternal Son of God were all dumbfounded. The eternal Son of God was the current divine Son of the eternal divine dynasty. His cultivation had reached the peak of the quasi-supreme level, and he was only half a step away from becoming a supreme. Among his peers, the eternal Son of God was absolutely invincible. But now, in this wildlands, a native could actually compete with the eternal Son of God. It was unbelievable. It's you. Only then did the eternal Son of God see who had sent the box flying. It was the young fellow who had been fighting with one of his followers. This thing is mine. Jiyu Xiaofeng grinned as he held the box in his hand. You forced me to do this. The eternal Son of God was so angry that his eyes turned red. The box was his ultimate treasure, and even in his world, it was a famous Tao item. He could not afford to lose this treasure. So what if I forced you to do this? Jiyu Xiaofeng didn't care at all. Roar! The eternal Son of God suddenly threw his head back and roared. The next moment, his body underwent a shocking transformation. The muscles on his body swelled, bursting out of his clothes. Pieces of purple scales appeared on his skin, and an extremely violent aura exploded from his body. Rumble! The void around the eternal Son of God was shaking, and one pitch-black spatial rift after another flashed like black lightning. The Chaos Immortal Mansion world was extremely stable, and the void that had just cracked would be repaired in an instant. All the experts who were watching the battle nearby felt a great pressure and a great sense of danger. The eternal Son of God had become extremely dangerous. This guy, everyone stared at the ever-changing eternal Son of God, dumbfounded. They saw that he had turned into a monster, a humanoid monster with purple scales all over his body. The monster's blood-red pupils were especially frightening. Its bloody mouth was filled with incomparably sharp teeth, and each of those teeth was triangular. If this monster took a bite, a large piece of flesh would definitely be torn off. "What is this thing?" someone exclaimed. "Die." A terrifying wave of divine will instantly blasted that person's body. The next moment, that person did not even have time to scream before his entire body exploded into a bloody mist. Even his primordial spirit instantly dissipated in the void. All the experts who were watching the battle were inexplicably shocked. A powerful living being had been killed by that monster with a single thought, and both his body and primordial spirit had been destroyed. "All of you deserve to die." The eternal Son of God's divine will, who had already turned into a monster, had become many times stronger. A powerful wave of divine will erupted from his body, and in the next moment, Jiyu Xiaofeng, Jiyu Ling, and even the powerful living beings who were watching the battle from afar were sent flying. The weaker living beings were directly shattered in the void, turning into a bloody mist, their bodies and primordial spirits destroyed. Roar! Jiyu Ling roared. She felt her spiritual soul trembling, and blood seeping out of her orifices. Even her primordial spirit felt like it was being torn apart. This was a divine will attack. If it was not for the fact that her spiritual soul was strong enough, her primordial spirit would have been shattered by this divine will, and she would have become a soulless walking corpse. He actually cultivated divine will. Jiyu Fei, who was watching from the side, was a little surprised. This fella from the legendary Supreme Grand World actually cultivated divine will, a divine will that even a puny immortal spirit could possess. The most basic and ordinary things were often the most powerful things. Jiyu Fei suddenly realized that he had been neglecting something that he should not have been neglecting. The most powerful power was not necessarily the most primitive power of heaven and earth. Any kind of power could be the most powerful. The power of Eternal Son's divine will, for example, was enough to suppress everything. No matter how powerful one's divine will was, he could destroy it with a single thought. Good move. Chapter 45-55. The fact that the Eternal Divine Dynasty's Divine Son had turned into a monster shocked everyone. The Eternal Divine Son was no longer a human, but a monster in human form. This monster was covered in purple scales, each of which was glowing brightly. Ancient and mysterious Tao patterns could be vaguely seen within them. This was the strongest physique, the Eternal Divine Son's strongest form. "You forced me to use my strongest form. Your deaths have been worth it." The Eternal Divine Son's blood-red eyes swept across Jiyu Xiaofeng and the others. A powerful divine will erupted from his body, sweeping out in all directions like a raging wave. Even Jiyu Ling felt her spirit tremble, as if her primordial spirit was about to be shaken out of her body by the Eternal Divine Will. Compete. Jiyu Ling sat cross-legged in the void, using all her strength to resist the Eternal Divine Son's divine will attack. A ball of divine light surged from her body, blocking most of the divine will. Jiyu Xiaofeng's cultivation was slightly lower than Jiyu Ling's. There was a crack in between his eyebrows, and blood was seeping out. The other powerful beings who were watching the battle all retreated far away. No one dared to get close. After all, the divine will that erupted from the Eternal Divine Son was an indiscriminate attack. Kill. The Eternal Divine Son laughed sinisterly. He pounced on Jiyu Ling, leaving behind an afterimage on the spot. His speed and strength were both faster and stronger than before his transformation. His lunge was filled with a murderous aura, and the divine will attack doubled the power of his lunge. The suppression of the divine will made it difficult for Jiyu Ling to evade effectively. However, she was fearless. She suddenly looked up and flashed a devilish smile. What? The Eternal Divine Son was shocked. She was still smiling at this time? The next moment, he knew why Jiyu Ling was smiling. Ji Ling's eyebrows suddenly split open, and a beam of divine light shot out from it, heading straight for the eternal divine sun. The eternal divine sun suddenly felt as if he had seen a ghost. He was unimaginably frightened, and in the next moment, he retreated. The beam of divine light that shot out from Gulling's brow instantly turned into a divine sword that slashed towards eternal Son of God at an extremely fast speed. 9 Secrets of the Immortal Tao. Someone saw through the origin of Ji Ling's God art. Primordial Soul Tao Transformation Sword? Ji Xiaofeng's eyes widened upon seeing this. As Ji Fei's grand disciple, it went without saying that he had inherited the 9 esoteric secrets of immortal Tao. However, the 9 esoteric secrets of immortal Tao performed by Ji Xiaofeng paled in comparison to Ji Ling Wush. The primordial soul Tao sword flashed past, and the next moment, the eternal Son of God suddenly stopped in his tracks. Martial uncle is awesome. Ji Xiaofeng couldn't help but admire Ji Ling's ability to kill the eternal Son of God with a single strike. The eternal Son of God glared at Ji Ling with eyes that looked like they were about to spit fire. His divine body split apart and dissipated into the void, completely disappearing. He died just like that. How is this possible? Someone in the distance cried out in alarm. From their point of view, the eternal Son of God was extremely powerful, and it would be extremely difficult to kill such an existence. However, could Ji Ling really kill the eternal Son of God with a single sword strike? Even the followers of the eternal Son of God were shocked by this scene. It should be pointed out that once the eternal Son of God was killed, they, as followers of the eternal Son of God, would also be buried with him. Can't even withstand a single blow. Ji Xiaofeng laughed. However, Ji Ling's expression was still grave. Could it be? Ji Xiaofeng could not help but be shocked by Ji Ling's expression. As expected, a faint wave of divine will suddenly appeared, and a figure appeared out of the void without any warning. This person was the eternal Son of God. At this moment, the eternal Son of God was still in his monstrous form, but there was a hideous wound on his brow that was difficult to heal. Blood continued to seep out of the eternal Son of God's brow and drip down, making him look even more ferocious and terrifying. However, Ji Xiaofeng breathed a sigh of relief. Although the eternal Son of God had not been killed by Uncle Master Ji Ling's sword, his aura had weakened by more than half. In other words, Uncle Master Ji Ling's sword strike had seriously injured the eternal Son of God. This guy is from the eternal world. Gulling suddenly said such a sentence. What? What world is that? Eternal world. Everyone who heard Ji Ling's words was shocked to the extreme. Eternal world. Even Ji Fei could not help but be moved. Only an existence like him knew that there was eternity above the extreme Tao. A great world that could give birth to an extreme Tao supremacy was a perfect great world. The primordial world and the primogenitor world, on the other hand, were super great worlds. They were the source of all the worlds in the universe and were the highest known form of world. However, there was a higher level of world above the source of all the worlds in the universe, and that was the eternal world. The eternal world was actually a guess that Ji Fei had when he was in the eternal realm. However, he did not expect that his guess would be true. Ji Ling had used a primordial spirit Tao sword secret technique to slash at the eternal Son of God. He had read some of the memories of the eternal Son of God's primordial spirit and learned some secrets. The eternal Son of God could not help but be shocked. After taking a blow from his opponent had even read some of the memories of his primordial spirit. This secret technique was truly unimaginable. It was hard to imagine that someone in such a primitive and backward world could actually create such a peerless heavenly art. Even if he were to display his strongest form, it was still not enough in front of these aboriginals. Die, all of you. The eternal Son of God suddenly opened his mouth and spat out a scroll. As the scroll unfurled, it immediately shone with a myriad of divine lights. It was as if a magnificent army was charging out of the scroll, and the entire Chaos Immortal Mansion world shook violently from the power that erupted from the scroll. He wants to destroy this world. Someone exclaimed. As the scroll unfurled, it was as if a supreme existence of the eternal realm was attacking, shattering the world and destroying everything. That's an eternal Tao artifact. Tong Yu, who was standing beside Ji Yu Fei, widened his eyes and stared in disbelief at the scroll in the sky. He was an existence of the half-step eternal realm, so he was naturally particularly sensitive to the aura of the eternal realm. That scroll actually contained the true supreme power of the eternal realm. On the scroll of eternity, it was as if another eternal-level creature was about to rush out. A beast claw stretched out from the scroll, trying to destroy the world. The power of the eternal realm spread out from the beast claw, shattering the world and destroying the void. One after another, pitch-black spatial rifts appeared between heaven and earth. They were like black flashes, constantly appearing and disappearing. As soon as the beast claw appeared, countless experts in the Chaos Immortal Mansion world felt their souls tremble. That Ji Yu Fei is too ruthless. I'm just taking part in the trial, and he's actually going to personally attack. Some people were very dissatisfied. Only Ji Yu Fei himself could display such supreme divine might. But no one could have imagined that this time, Ji Yu Fei would not personally attack. At this time, even Ji Yu Fei felt a great deal of pressure. Ji Yu Ling, Ji Yu Xiaofeng, and the others could not even move a finger. They were completely suppressed. Die, all of you, die for me. The eternal Son of God laughed maniacally. This eternal scroll was his final trump card. Even he would never have imagined that he would use up his most precious eternal scroll in a backward, barbaric world. If he did not use this scroll, he would probably have to give up his life here. The beast claw that stretched out from the eternal scroll was extremely terrifying, and it was about to wipe out the entire Chaos Immortal Mansion world. However, at this moment, a sword light suddenly flew out from the side. This sword light was not very large, and it could be seen clearly with the naked eye. However, it was this ordinary sword that made everyone dumbfounded. The sword light turned and directly slashed at the beast claw. In the next moment, the beast claw was actually chopped off, and not a single drop of blood splattered out. It can actually injure an eternal one. The eternal Son of God was extremely shocked. In his strongest state, he could definitely withstand an attack from an extreme-grade supreme being, and the power sealed in the eternal scroll was the true eternal power. In particular, that beast claw was condensed from eternal-level power. It had actually been destroyed by a single sword strike. Who the hell is hiding? What a scoundrel. The eternal Son of God was almost going crazy. He swept his eyes in all directions, trying to find the scoundrel who had sneakily attacked him, but no one dared to jump out at this time. At this moment, the eternal scroll was broken, and it directly fell from the sky. The sword light that slashed the scroll of eternity also disappeared into the void, as if it had never appeared in the first place. Master, Tong Yu knew that in the entire Chaos Immortal Mansion world, only Ji Yu Fei could deal with the eternal Son of God. However, although Ji Yu Fei had used the 9 Heaven Stars sword to destroy the eternal scroll, he did not continue to attack. Boom! At this moment, Ji Yu Ling exploded, and endless divine fire burst out of her body. 9 divine phoenixes danced in the divine fire, and the fire elemental power released was unprecedentedly strong. Now it's our turn. Ji Yu Ling flipped her right hand, and the 9 phoenix cauldron appeared in her hand. The 9 phoenix cauldron flew out of Ji Yu Ling's hand, and directly suppressed the eternal Son of God. 9 divine phoenixes rushed out of the ancient cauldron, and directly attacked the eternal Son of God. Ji Yu Ling had completely activated the power of the 9 phoenix cauldron, and endless fire elemental power swept up high into the sky. Hehe, I'm coming too. Ji Yu Xiaofeng took out a divine saber and directly slashed at the eternal Son of God. A blood-colored saber light immediately rushed out of the divine saber in his hand. Chapter 45-56. In the Chaos Immortal Mansion world, a trial for powerful creatures below the half-step supreme level began. This trial was led by Ji Yu Fei. Extreme Supremes were not allowed to enter the Chaos Immortal Mansion world. Only half-step Supremes and those below the half-step Supreme level were eligible to enter. This was a chance Ji Yu Fei had given to the Quasi-Supremes to break through. It was also a chance for Ji Yu Ling, Old Turtle, and the others to make the ultimate leap. The fortune in the Chaos Immortal Mansion world was no small matter. If one could obtain the heaven-defying fortune here, They could make the ultimate leap and become an invincible extreme supremes in the 9 heavens and 10 earths. No one could resist such a temptation. All the quasi-supremes rushed to the Chaos Immortal Mansion world like crazy. In this way, Jiyu Fei made a fortune. The Chaos Immortal Mansion world had been managed by its original owner, Tong Yu, for countless years. There were fortunes everywhere, but also dangers everywhere. This was originally a trap that Tong Yu had set up to harvest the life essence of the experts. However, an uninvited guest had come to this trial. This uninvited guest had a frightening background, which made Jiyu Fei feel incredulous. This person was from the legendary Eternal World, the divine son of the Eternal Divine Dynasty. The divine son of the Eternal Divine Dynasty cultivated his divine will, but his body was also extremely tough. When he was in his strongest form, he was simply a supreme Tao artifact in human form. Unfortunately, the person he met was Jiyu Ling, Jiyu Fei's daughter. Jiyu Fei was not a competent father. Although he had taught his daughter the true meaning of martial arts, he did not give her too much guidance in her cultivation. Instead, he let her develop herself. To become an expert, one had to move forward one step at a time. A true expert was achieved through one's own hard work and cultivation. No one could help one. Even Jiyu Fei could not turn his daughter Jiyu Ling into an expert who could look down on the world. However, it was undeniable that Jiyu Fei had too many good cultivation resources, especially the cultivation techniques, the 9 secrets of the immortal path, and the supreme sword path. These were all once Jiyu Fei's trump cards. The 9 secrets of the immortal path possessed even more unfathomable power. Jiyu Ling cultivated one of the 9 secrets of the immortal path, the primordial divinity sword technique, which happened to be the nemesis of Eternal Divine Son's divine will. Eternal Son of God had been struck by Jiyu Ling's primordial spirit Tao sword. Although he had not died, he had been gravely injured. This shocked and angered him. His opponent's secret technique made him feel the threat of death. Compared to Eternal World, this world was very primitive and backward. To think that he would end up getting wounded by the aboriginals of this world. How was this possible? What made him even more incredulous and unacceptable was that the power of the cultivation techniques in this world could actually make him feel like his life was in danger. How could these low-level cultivation techniques have this kind of power? It was impossible. At this time, Jiyu Ling and Jiyu Xiaofeng attacked with all their might, wanting to kill the Eternal God's Son. Shon. 9 Phoenix illuminates the heavens. Endless fire elemental power swept toward the Eternal Son of God, burning the air and distorting it. Countless flame-shaped patterns appeared within the divine fire. The 9 divine phoenixes lunged at the Eternal Son of God from the sea of fire. On the other side, Jiyu Xiaofeng slashed out with his saber. The blood-red saber light illuminated half the sky, as if a sea of blood had descended between heaven and earth. The saber chi was vast and mighty. With such a slash, it was as if the stars in the sky could be cut down. Even an existence like Eternal God felt an extreme sense of danger from the combined attack of the 2 experts. Is my Tao something that you natives can even imagine? The Eternal Son of God sneered. In the next moment, a formless gust of wind surged out of his body, and the 9 divine phoenixes that were charging at him were torn to pieces by the gust of wind. The towering divine flames were also extinguished by the astral winds. Even Jiyu Xiaofeng's all-out attack was met with great resistance. Although the blade light was still heading for the Eternal Son of God's head, its speed had slowed down. Yes, this guy's understanding of Tao is much deeper than Ling and Lin Feng's. Jiyu Fei could not help but shudder when he saw this. Although the other party's Tao was only the simple great path of wind, it was unfathomably profound. In contrast, the Tao that he cultivated was crude and primitive. Buzz. The power of the great path of wind erupted from Eternal God's body, causing the void around him to tremble violently. Jiyu Ling and Jiyu Xiaofeng were both sent flying. The divine saber in Jiyu Xiaofeng's hand almost flew out of his hand. Jiyu Ling, along with the cauldron, was sent flying thousands of miles away. Die. Eternal God's divine will erupted once again. Countless divine will transformed into countless swords and sabers that slashed at Jiyu Xiaofeng and Jiyu Ling. What a powerful divine will. Jiyu Ling was both shocked and furious. She did not expect this guy to not only survive after being slashed by her primordial spirit Dao sword, but also have such a powerful divine will. If the Eternal Sun's divine will transformed into a sword, it would definitely be much more powerful than ordinary Dao treasures. Moreover, this move was specifically targeted at the primordial spirit. However, once one was slashed by such a sword, one would still be injured. Jiyu Xiaofeng couldn't help but be startled when he saw the swords and sabers coming at him from all directions. He immediately dashed forward. His body trembled as a ball of divine light appeared and instantly enveloped him. The countless swords and sabers of divine will immediately slashed at the ball of divine light around Jiyu Xiaofeng. The ball of divine light around Jiyu Xiaofeng shook violently. Countless runes appeared and intertwined on the ball of divine light, communicating with the universe and drawing upon the power of heaven and earth. However, there was no suspense. Jiyu Xiaofeng only lasted for less than 15 minutes before he was sent flying by the countless swords and sabers of divine will. He coughed up blood continuously. Jiyu Xiaofeng was severely injured. The places on his body where he had been slashed were a bloody mess. In some places, even his bones were exposed. It was a wretched sight. For those who were watching the battle from afar, the result of this battle left them dumbfounded. One must know that Jiyu Xiaofeng and Jiyu Ling were not insignificant figures. Moreover, they had an even more powerful being behind them. Rumble, Jiyu Ling's blood was boiling. It had been a long time since she had met such an opponent. I'll return it all to you. Jiyu Ling immediately used one of the 9 secrets of the immortal path, the chaotic secret technique, in the face of the countless swords and sabers slashing at her. What? Jiyu Ling was a little nervous when she saw the swords and sabers slashing at her. However, she quickly calmed down. The countless swords and sabers were simultaneously reversed by the power that erupted from Jiyu Ling's body. Wang, the eternal Son of God, suddenly opened his eyes. A terrifying wave of divine will erupted and the countless swords and sabers piercing at him all disappeared without a trace. You can actually reverse my attack. The eternal Son of God could not help but be surprised. Sword of the primordial spirit of the Tao's. Jiyu Ling did not hesitate and immediately used the chaotic secret technique of the 9 secrets of the immortal path. The swords formed from Jiyu Ling's primordial spirit were extremely fast. Both their speed and power had increased significantly. Whoosh! The sword light from Jiyu Ling's swords flashed across the eternal Son of God's body and then disappeared without a trace. So fast. The eternal Son of God uttered these 2 words with difficulty. Then, with a bang, his entire body suddenly exploded and turned into dust. He's still not dead this time? The Black Wind Autarch shouted. Jiyu Fei had earned countless cultivation resources in this trial. Only living beings below the extreme Tao could enter the Chaos Immortal Mansion world to cultivate in seclusion. This eternal Son of God had been struck by Jiyu Ling's primordial spirit sword secret technique. Even his primordial spirit would be destroyed, and he would completely disappear from this world. He's dead for sure. One of the spectating elders sighed. This primordial spirit sword secret technique specialized in attacking primordial spirit. Who said I'm dead for sure? A voice sounded at this moment. The eternal Son of God's figure silently appeared in the void. His face was as pale as a sheet, and a trickle of blood seeped from the corner of his mouth. He had taken another blow from Jiyu Ling, but was still not dead. However, the eternal Son of God's aura had become even weaker. Ha ha, Uncle Master, give him a few more blows and exhaust him to death. Jiyu Xiaofeng laughed loudly. Not bad. Someone nodded. This method seemed to be working. Voom. Jiyu Ling activated her mystic art, and the power of the 9 secrets of the immortal Tao burst forth from her body. With each burst, her power continued to increase. The eternal Son of God did not hesitate. He transformed into a dazzling beam of sword light and slashed at Jiyu Ling. You want to compete with me in the sword? Jiyu Ling smiled. Her most powerful ability was her sword. She separated her hands and countless sword lights appeared. One after another, powerful sword shadows appeared around her. The 2 forces of the sword Tao collided and separated in an instant. The two figures moved rapidly in the void, and each wave of their hands was a fatal blow. Endless sword chi tore through the void, destroying everything in its path. Both Jiyu Ling and the Eternal Son of God had cultivated their sword Dao to the extreme. Although it was difficult to determine a victor between such opponents, it was not impossible. They exchanged thousands of blows in an instant, and the two figures passed each other. Jiyu Ling felt a burning pain in her abdomen. She looked down and saw a bloody hole in her abdomen, and blood was seeping out. "I've been hit." Jiyu Ling could not believe it, but she did not panic. She quickly activated her mystic art, trying to force out the power of the Great Path from her wound. Although she had been hit by the Eternal Son of God's sword, the Eternal Son of God had also been hit by hers. It could be said that in a contest of sword Dao, there was no clear victor between them. The Eternal Son of God's body was covered in blood, especially on his left shoulder. There was a bone-deep wound, and blood was seeping out of it, dyeing his clothes red. Damn it! The Eternal Son of God was going crazy. He could not even beat a native here. How was he supposed to continue living in the eternal world? Chapter 45-57. Eternal God's battle prowess was astonishing. He had actually managed to injure Jiyu Xiaofeng and Jiyu Ling together. To put it more accurately, Jiyu Ling and Eternal God had both been injured. Eternal God's left shoulder had been struck by Jiyu Ling's sword, while Jiyu Ling's abdomen had been pierced by Eternal God's sword chi. This was a wound of the Great Path. If one's Great Path power was stronger than others, such wounds would quickly heal. However, if one's Great Path power was weaker than others, then one's life would be in danger. Others' Great Path power would attach to the wound and invade one's body, destroying one's own Great Path power. Once one's Great Path power was completely destroyed by the opponent's Great Path power, then one would die. Jiyu Ling immediately used her mystic arts to expel the Eternal God's sword Wei power from her wound. However, she immediately frowned. Her opponent's sword Wei power was unimaginably pure, and it was constantly destroying her Great Path power. Jiyu Ling looked down and saw that around the wound on her abdomen, there were two different kinds of Great Path patterns intertwining, clashing, and destroying each other. On the other hand, Eternal God's wound looked rather frightening. The sword wound on his shoulder was so deep that the bone could be seen. However, the power of the Great Path that belonged to Jiyu Ling was constantly being forced out of his body. Runes kept rushing out of his wounds before dissipating into the void. This was a sign that Jiyu Ling's Great Path power was being destroyed. This, Jiyu Ling could not help but groan inwardly. This guy's understanding of the Great Path was much deeper than hers. How could there be such a being in this world? One had to know that Jiyu Ling was Jiyu Fei's daughter. She had received the best cultivation resources and cultivated the best cultivation methods in all the heavens. However, her Great Path power could not compare to this guy's. Eternal God was very young. This could be sensed from the aura of his soul. A person's appearance could be changed, but the aura of one's soul could never be changed. This was because it was the mark of life. The Eternal Son of God was even younger than Jiyu Ling, but the Great Path power he cultivated was extremely strong and pure. Raw. The Eternal Son of God glared at Jiyu Ling and growled like a wounded beast. He seemed ready to pounce at Jiyu Ling at any moment. Young Master, at this moment, the followers of Eternal Son of God wanted to rush towards Eternal Son of God. However, they were stopped. Your opponent is me. A man in green blocked an old man in plain clothes. Where do you want to go? Another expert walked out and stopped a black-bearded middle-aged man. The battle between Ancient Spirit and Eternal Godchild had caused a huge commotion. Most of the experts in the Chaos Immortal Mansion world could sense it. Some of the nearby experts rushed over. Kid, get lost. The plain-clothed old man was infuriated. He waved his sleeves, which were like the Milky Way, sweeping towards the green-clothed young man. Star power? The corners of the green-clothed young man's lips curled up into a sneer. In the next moment, he extended his right hand and a large halberd immediately appeared in his hand. Buzz. The moment the azure-robed young man grasped the halberd, the shadow of a dragon immediately rushed out from the halberd and danced in the void. Great Dragon Halberd, is that the mortal world's azure dragon? That's Azure Dragon, ranked 12th on the mortal heavenly roll? Someone exclaimed. In the mortal world, someone had created an earth roll and a sky roll. The earth roll was the ranking of cultivators below the sage level. Those below the sage level were considered ants. The ranking of cultivators below the sage level was the earth roll. The ranking of cultivators above the sage level was the sky roll. The fact that Azure Dragon was ranked 12th on the mortal heavenly roll was enough to prove his strength. Of course, there were also people who didn't care about these so-called earth and sky rolls. In the heavenly realm, there were also so-called earth and sky rolls. I didn't expect him to appear here. Didn't they say that he was in seclusion? Someone said in disbelief. TCH, can't he come out of seclusion? Someone said disapprovingly. Ranked 12th on the mortal heavenly roll? Gu Fei had already recognized Azure Dragon the moment he came out. This guy had been his rival back in the southern wilderness. Even now, Azure Dragon still saw him as a rival and wanted to surpass him. However, how could it be so easy to surpass me, Gu Fei? Azure Dragon directly charged towards the old man. The great dragon halberd in his hand seemed to have turned into a real dragon, pouncing towards the old man. Boom! The two forces collided. The old man's long sleeves were shredded into pieces, and the dragon shadow on the great dragon halberd in Azure Dragon's hand also disappeared. The two experts couldn't help but take a few steps back. Again, Azure Dragon's battle intent surged. He swung the great dragon halberd in his hand and swept it towards the old man. The old man in linen clothes also attacked. It was as if a starry sky had appeared around him. Countless stars rushed towards the Azure Dragon to kill him. Rumble, an incomparably shocking sound rang out in the void, as if two heavens and earth were colliding. Azure Dragon was directly sent flying, and a trace of blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. Although the old man was also a half-step supreme being, his understanding of the Great Tao was much deeper than Azure Dragon's. The deeper one's understanding of the Great Tao, the higher one's cultivation, and the stronger one's battle prowess would be. A clay chicken and pottery dog, coming here to die. The old man was enraged. This brat actually dared to block his path, he must be tired of living. What did you say? Azure Dragon was enraged. In the next moment, he threw his head back and let out a long roar. A golden dragon shadow rushed out from his body, covering the entire sky. Dragon might spread for 100,000 li, and billions of living beings were terrified. Huh! The old man's eyes narrowed as he stared at the golden dragon in the sky. Origin Dragon Chi? In a valley tens of thousands of kilometers away, the old tortoise could not help but be shocked when it sensed the dragon might. The primordial dragon chi was a dragon chi that was nurtured in the primal chaos before the world was created. In the dragon race, the origin dragon chi was considered the origin of the dragon race. It was the origin dragon chi that gave birth to the chaotic ancestral dragon. That Azure Dragon's luck is too heaven-defying to be able to obtain something like this. The old tortoise quickly realized who was using the origin dragon chi. The person who could use the origin dragon chi was the half-step supreme being Azure Dragon from the southern wasteland. This is the origin dragon chi. A bumpkin like you doesn't deserve such a divine item. The old man's eyes were filled with greed. To them, a natural divine item like this was unimaginable. It could be used to exchange for what they wanted, and it could also be sold for a sky-high price. The origin dragon chi had heaven-defying effects on the dragon race. For example, the Azure Dragon also had an extreme bloodline in his body. Of course, this bloodline was already very faint, but it still caused him to be stuck in the half-step supreme realm. The primogenitor couldn't take that final leap. However, with the origin dragon chi, Azure Dragon could sever the supreme being bloodline in his body, giving him the possibility of taking that final step. Phut, so noble. In my eyes, aren't you all the same as trash? Azure Dragon said disdainfully. What? The plain-clothed old man was enraged. One after another, stars revolved around his body. He was like a giant standing in the starry sky, looking down on the world. Kill. Azure Dragon once again attacked the old man. The great dragon halberd in his hand turned into a golden dragon, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws, pouncing towards the old man. Boom! The plain-clothed old man threw a punch, and his fist collided with the golden dragon charge, producing an extremely dull sound. The powerful fist force directly shattered the golden dragon, revealing the great dragon halberd's true form. Azure Dragon only felt the great dragon halberd in his hands shaking violently. In the next moment, the great dragon halberd was almost knocked away, and blood seeped out of his hands. What a powerful fist force! Azure Dragon was shocked. Eat another one of my fist. The old man attacked again. Without any suspense, Azure Dragon was sent flying again, spitting out a mouthful of blood. It seemed like he was no match for the old man at all. Azure Dragon is still a little weak. Jiu Fei was a little moved as he watched from the side. This group of people were known to be the strongest amongst their peers. Otherwise, they wouldn't have chosen to follow the eternal Son of God. At this time, in another direction, the black-bearded middle-aged man was enraged, and he attacked the person in front of him. A large hand appeared in the void, slapping towards that person. The entire world seemed to become extremely unstable, as if it could collapse at any moment. That person sneered and also slapped his palm towards the black-bearded middle-aged man. Boom! The two forces collided with each other in an instant, resulting in a deafening explosion. A terrifying wave of energy rippled out in all directions. The two figures separated in an instant, and then charged back at each other, fighting fiercely. That's the one from the Jew clan? Someone recognized the young man who blocked the black-bearded middle-aged man. The Jew clan's little heavenly lord, ranked 11th on the mortal heavenly roll? Someone exclaimed. The Jew clan had produced an amazing fellow, even more outstanding than the Jew clan's young immortal king. He was known as the Jew clan's little heavenly lord, and his cultivation had reached the half-step supremacy realm. I didn't expect him to come too. Someone exclaimed. The fortune in the Chaos Immortal Mansion world attracted the attention of countless experts. Not only the Jew clan's little heavenly lord had come, but the other clan of the Ancients' heirs had also come. Their cultivation was no weaker than the Jew clan's little heavenly lord. The more lively the better. When Jiu Fei saw this scene, he couldn't help but smile. The more people that came, the more cultivation resources he would obtain. It must be known that in order to enter the primal Chaos Immortal Mansion world, one would need a quasi-immortal herb or a quasi-exalted Dao artifact. Chapter 4558. There were cultivation families in the human realm that had existed since ancient times. The Jew family of the primordial era was one of the ancient cultivation families. Moreover, it was a great family that had once produced an extreme grade supremacy. It had once unified the entire human realm. However, the primordial era had collapsed in the end. Countless sects and ancient religions from the primordial era had disappeared along with it. However, some powerful clans had managed to survive and their bloodlines had not been severed. The Jew family of the primordial era had once produced an extreme grade supremacy. Their clan had a contingency plan. The experts of the clan had all hidden in outer space and escaped the calamity of extermination. In this life, the Jew family of the primordial era had finally emerged and shocked the world. Be it the little immortal king of the Jew family or the little heavenly lord of the Jew family, they were all monstrous existences. Especially the little heavenly lord of the Jew family, Ju Qi. He was the most shocking disciple of the Jew family in the past. He was fighting the black-bearded, middle-aged man from the eternal world. Surprisingly, he was not at a disadvantage. Instead, he was attacking and defending at the same time. The battle was extremely intense. A rumbling sound came from Ju Qi's body. The next moment, 5 rays of divine light shot out from his body and turned into 5 divine swords. Each of the divine swords exuded a monstrous sword energy fluctuation. Go! Ju Qi waved his right hand, and the 5 swords that were circling around him immediately pierced towards the middle-aged man. Wherever the 5 swords passed, the space would tremble, and ripples that could be seen with the naked eye spread out in all directions. Great Tao of the 5 elements! The black-bearded, middle-aged man stared at Ju Qi and his eyes lit up. Although Ju Chi's great Tao was the genuine great Tao of the five elements, in the eyes of the black-bearded, middle-aged man, Ju Chi's great Tao of the five elements was too crude. The cultivation techniques of this family were not strong enough to cultivate the grand Taos of the five elements to their limits. However, things were different in Eternal World. There were countless cultivation techniques there. That was especially true for high-grade cultivation techniques. All of them could point directly towards the essence of the various grand Taos and cultivate them to their limits. In fact, when a world evolved to the extreme, the various resources would become scarce. Because the divine objects that were born in the primordial era had all been used up, some high-level worlds would turn their attention to other worlds to plunder their cultivation resources. Even in primordial worlds like the primordial world and the primordial world, the top forces of these worlds would more or less control the resources of some low-level worlds. Controlling a world was not something rare among the top forces of the primordial world. These were the world hunting grounds that the patriarchs of the primogenitor realm spoke of. These were the places where the top forces hunted. Chi's great Tao of the great Taos. However, no one knew that Jiu Fei of Fei had control of the world's resources. Realm. Jiu Tian world realm world Chi's world realm. Of course, even though Jiu Fei had obtained the resources of these worlds, it wasn't easy for him to defend them. I got the Tao. Chi the black-bearded middle-aged man gave Ju Chi a ferocious smile. In the next moment, he pounced towards Ju Chi. World, Ju was shocked. Ju of Ju. However, something that shocked Ju Chi happened. His five elements magical sword, which could almost pierce through the void, instantly pierced through the black-bearded middle-aged man's body. However, not a single trace of blood appeared on the black-bearded middle-aged man's body. Ju Chi's five elements magical sword pierced through the air. How is this possible? The Black Wind Supremacy, the Shooting Sun Supremacy, and the others were shocked. Could this guy have cultivated the same secret technique as their master? The 9 Secrets of the Immortal Path was created by the Supreme Tao Ancestor. It was an extreme cultivation technique with unfathomable power. The mystic power that the Tao Ancestor used was very similar to the antivoid mystic technique. Those who did not know might think that it was one of the 9 Secrets of the Immortal Path. The Ju family's little heavenly venerate, Ju Chi, was indeed the most powerful existence among the younger generation of the Ju family. Whoosh! In the next moment, he soared into the sky. However, the black-bearded middle-aged man's figure was like a shadow as he pounced towards little heavenly venerate Ju Chi. 5 elements domain. Ju Chi's reaction was extremely fast. A ball of 5-colored divine light immediately exploded from his body and enveloped his entire body in a light shroud. The void around him formed a world of its own. However, Ju Chi was instantly dumbfounded. He saw that the black-bearded middle-aged man's figure had passed through the 5-colored divine light around him and pounced on Ju Chi. Oh! Everyone who saw this scene was inexplicably shocked. Roar! Ju Chi suddenly hugged his head and roared, as if he was in great pain. Soon, his eyes, ears, and nose were bleeding. Hihi, this 5 elements Tao body is mine. Scram! It was as if there were 2 souls inside Ju Chi's body, causing him to completely lose control. Possession. The expressions of some of the old antiques turned very ugly. Doesn't seem like it. Someone said hesitantly. Possession meant abandoning one's own Tao body. The primordial spirit would rush out from the Tao body and seize another expert's Tao body. This was possession. However, the black-bearded middle-aged man didn't seem to abandon his Tao body. At that moment, the battle between Jiu Ling and Jiu Xiaofeng and the Eternal God had reached its most critical juncture. Jiu Ling kept using the primordial spirit sword of the Way to kill the Eternal God. The Eternal God was quite impressive. He was still alive after being slashed by Jiu Ling so many times. If it had been an ordinary quasi-supremacy, they would have died instantly after being slashed by Jiu Ling's primordial spirit sword of the Way. The Eternal God's aura was getting weaker and weaker, and he was about to be killed by Jiu Ling. However, at the critical moment, a powerful divine will rushed out from the depths of the Eternal God's primordial spirit. How dare you kill my descendant? You deserve to die. A phantom appeared in the sky. Although it was just a phantom, the invincible aura it exuded made even Jiyu Fei a little surprised. Rumble, the divine will incarnation directly shot towards Jiyu Ling and Jiyu Xiaofeng. The huge palm enveloped the entire sky and the powerful energy waves shook the void, causing spatial cracks to appear one after another. A power that surpasses the extreme Tao? Jiyu Fei stared at the blurry figure with a grave expression. Even an extreme Tao supremacy would not be able to withstand the palm of the divine will incarnation, let alone Jiyu Ling and Jiyu Xiaofeng. Jiyu Ling and Jiyu Xiaofeng felt a great pressure descend from the sky, so much so that they could not stand up straight. It was difficult for them to avoid it. The divine will in the depths of the eternal God's primordial spirit was a life-saving talisman left by a supreme being of the eternal God dynasty. When the eternal God's son encountered a life-threatening crisis, the divine will in the depths of his primordial spirit would erupt and turn into a divine will incarnation to kill all enemies. This was enough to show that the big shots of the eternal God dynasty valued the eternal God's son. Just as the huge palm was about to land on Jiyu Ling and Jiyu Xiaofeng, a sword radiance suddenly rushed out of Jiyu Ling's body. The sword radiance shot up into the sky, broke through the layers of palm energy, and pierced through the super-huge palm that was coming down from the sky. What? The divine will incarnation that rushed out of the eternal God's son's body was extremely shocked. How could a puny ant hurt it? The eternal sword treasure. At the next moment, the spiritual will incarnation was shocked once again. The sword light in the void made a turn in the void and directly strangled the spiritual will incarnation. Then, the spiritual will incarnation dissipated in the void. However, the divine sense incarnation soon reappeared in front of everyone. I am immortal. The incarnation roared. At this time, the eternal God's son's body was completely controlled by the incarnation. Rumble, the world shook, and pitch-black cracks appeared in the void as a terrifying aura of destruction spread out. Jiyu Fei watched the scene calmly and did not make a move. The followers of the eternal Son of God charged forward in a frenzy, wanting to save the eternal Son of God. However, the followers of the eternal God's Son were stopped by the geniuses of the human realm, heaven realm, ancestral realm, and primordial realm. You guys who think you're high and mighty are nothing more than this, someone said loudly in disdain. At this time, the azure dragon knocked back the old man with a punch, and his entire body became one with the primordial dragon chi. Now, the azure dragon's every move carried great power. How is this possible? The old man couldn't believe it. Whoosh! A sword radiance suddenly slashed down from the side, cleaving the old man in half. Even his nascent spirit was instantly destroyed in the void. An expert of a generation had fallen, just like that. At this time, the experts of the four major worlds attacked together, and the people of the eternal godly dynasty were in an extremely sorry state. People were constantly being killed. Let's go. Seeing that the situation was not good, the incarnation of the eternal God's Son broke through the void with the Tao body of the eternal God's Son in an attempt to escape from this world. Die. At this moment, a huge hand descended from the sky and grabbed the incarnation of the eternal God dynasty. Then, with a forceful grip, the incarnation of the eternal God dynasty shattered in the void. Tong Yu, a supreme existence who was a half-step into the eternal God realm, directly destroyed the incarnation of the eternal God dynasty. You destroyed my incarnation and killed my descendant. Just wait for your death. The incarnation of the eternal God dynasty sent out a wave of divine will before completely disappearing. So what if you are an eternal one? Jiyu Fei didn't care at all. The real body of the eternal God dynasty was in the eternal world, and it would not be easy for him to come over. It should be noted that the more powerful an existence was, the more they had to pay an unimaginable price to cross into the primordial realm or ancestral realm. It was not that it was impossible for the big shot of the eternal God dynasty to cross into the eternal God dynasty, but it was impossible for him to do so. Chapter 45-59. Roar. A furious roar came from the depths of a continent shrouded in immortal chi in the east of a vast world. The eternal world was so vast that not even extreme Tao Supremes knew how big it was, how vast it was, or how many living beings there were. There were 13 continents in the eastern part of the Everworld alone, and each continent was much larger than a perfect world. eternal world was simply too big. It had given birth to an endless number of life forms, and countless extremely powerful life forms were scattered across the various regions of this world. No one could unify this great world. The immortal continent, one of the 13 continents in the east, was the world of the inheritors of the immortal Tao. The entire continent was occupied by 3 major factions, and one of them was the Eternal Godly Dynasty. Although the Eternal Godly Dynasty was one of the 3 major factions in the immortal continent, it was only slightly above average among the 13 continents in the east. In Eternal World, a sect or clan could occupy an entire continent. As for those who stood at the apex of the pyramid, they could easily occupy several continents. Why is the patriarch so angry? In the ancestral land of the Eternal Godly Dynasty, in a valley where the immortal Qi was about to liquefy, everyone was terrified. They could feel the anger of the existence deep in the valley. The Divine Sun's life token is broken, someone exclaimed. What? Everyone in the valley was dumbfounded. The Divine Sun's life token was broken? What did that mean? Did His Highness die in the lower realm? How is that possible? His Highness died in the lower realm. All the senior members of the Eternal Godly Dynasty in the valley were stunned. Someone in the lower realm could kill His Highness. His Highness was protected by the Patriarch's will incarnation. In the entire Eternal Godly Dynasty, there was only one person who could be protected by the Patriarch's will incarnation, and that was the Divine Son of the Eternal Godly Dynasty. Unlike other factions, there was only one Divine Son in the Eternal Godly Dynasty. All the resources of the Eternal Godly Dynasty were devoted to nurturing one Divine Son, and once he matured, he would definitely become the next Imperial Lord of the Eternal Godly Dynasty. However, the only Divine Son of the Eternal Godly Dynasty had died, and he did not die in a battle with the Divine Sons of other major factions in the Eternal World. The death of the Eternal Divine Son in the lower realm was a great humiliation to the entire Eternal Divine Dynasty. Investigate. I want to know where the Divine Child died and who killed him. In the sky above the ancestral land of the Eternal Divine Dynasty, a furious roar came from a huge divine palace, and a terrible pressure descended on the world. Almost at the same time, powerful progenitor realm living beings in other parts of the celestial continent were alarmed. What's wrong with that guy from the Eternal Divine Dynasty? An old voice came from one of the divine mountains. That old man is getting more and more restless. In another region filled with immortal energy, a white-robed man walked out. However, the major forces of the celestial continent soon found out why the Eternal Emperor was so furious. The Divine Son of the Eternal Divine Dynasty was dead, and he had died in the lower realm. This is too funny. The Eternal Son of God died in the lower realm? Everyone found this hard to believe. The lower realms were all savage worlds, so what kind of experts were there? The Eternal Son of God is too unlucky. Some people were gloating. The entire celestial continent was dominated by 3 major forces, and they had been fighting openly and covertly for a long time. The death of the Eternal Divine Son was definitely a great thing for the other 2 major forces. However, the death of the Eternal Divine Dynasty's Son of God meant that the Eternal Divine Dynasty would immediately choose a new Son of God. This was not something that had never happened before. As a dynasty that had existed for countless years, it had naturally encountered cases of divine sons being killed. The death of a divine son was definitely a major event that shook the entire Eternal Divine Dynasty, and they immediately went to war with the forces that had killed the divine son. In the past, a divine son of the Eternal Divine Dynasty had died at the hands of the successor of another major force. It was said that the successor's force was destroyed by the Eternal Divine Dynasty not long after. That battle was earth-shattering, and the mountain gate of that major force was destroyed. Countless living beings perished, and blood dyed the earth red. That major force was eventually destroyed and uprooted by the Eternal Divine Dynasty. However, that major force was also full of experts, and it was inevitable that some of them had slipped through the net. Therefore, for countless years, the Eternal Divine Dynasty had been in constant trouble. Some people speculated that the death of the Eternal Divine Son might have been caused by the remnants of that major force. Soon, the Eternal Divine Dynasty took action. Some people saw the important figures of the Eternal Divine Dynasty open a portal that crossed worlds, sending countless heavenly soldiers of the eternal divine dynasty to an unknown major world. Some people saw a patriarch of the eternal divine dynasty howl into the sky and step into the portal. Meanwhile, the trial in the Chaos Immortal Mansion world was still going on, and the experts of the 4 major worlds were fighting for the fortune of this world. The commotion caused by the eternal Son of God had long since calmed down. However, the followers of the eternal Son of God were still impressive. Without the help of the extreme Tao Supremes, these people almost swept through the entire Chaos Immortal Mansion world. In the end, Yuan Hong of the Golden Spiritual Ape, Azure Dragon, Old Turtle, Jiyu Ling, the Ziyun siblings, and the strongest successors of the major primordial worlds joined forces to kill them. They had also paid a heavy price. I heard that the Azure Dragon was seriously injured and on the verge of death. He was rescued by a patriarch of the Azure Dragon clan. I wonder if it's true. Yes, I heard that even Yuan Hong, the Golden Spiritual Ape, was beaten until he vomited blood. The Demon Lord of the Demon Clan is still the best. He wasn't injured at all. In a safe area of the Chaos Immortal Mansion world, many young experts of the cultivation world had gathered. They were here to communicate or exchange what they needed. This was a place called the Void Flow in the Chaos Immortal Mansion world. The Void Flow was a valley in the Immortal Mansion world. It was filled with immortal chi, flowers, flowing springs, and pavilions. It was a fairyland. At this time, in a pavilion near the water, more than a dozen young cultivators were chatting happily. Among the young cultivators, there were mighty figures of the Demon Clan, outstanding talents of the Human Clan, and experts of other races. There was even an ancestral dragon expert of the Dragon Clan who was particularly eye-catching. He had reached the ancestral dragon realm at such a young age. This expert of the Dragon Clan was definitely a monstrous existence. Of course, there was no lack of geniuses and monstrous talents in the 4 major worlds. Countless experts had emerged in the 4 major worlds. Some experts had only cultivated for a few thousand years, but they were already able to compete with the experts of the older generation. Someone saw a young monk directly put an old ancestor into the alms bowl in his hand. "Hey, Ju Chi is here." At this time, a group of people surrounded a young man as he walked over. More than a dozen young cultivators in the pavilion hurriedly came out to greet him. "Brother Ju, how have you been?" The ancestral dragon expert of the Dragon Clan cupped his hands at Ju Chi. "Ao hi, what are you doing here?" Ju Chi could not help but feel displeased when he saw the guy with 2 ancestral dragon horns on his forehead. "Brother Ju, aren't you asking the obvious?" The ancestral dragon named Ao Hai said with a smile. "The opportunities here are not that easy to obtain." Ju Chi said indifferently. "Hihi, Brother Ju, do you still want to fight?" Ao Hai provoked. "Come on, I'm not afraid of you." Ju Chi's battle robe shone like a rainbow. "How dare you?" At this time, a voice rang out. Then, a woman in white walked in from outside. Chapter 4560. Void Flow was one of the few places in the world of the primordial Chaos Immortal Estate that had no killing formations, no traps, and no powerful beings occupying it. To be more precise, the Void Stream was a refuge. As long as nothing terrible happened, as long as one hid in the Void Stream in time, one would be safe. However, if something terrifying were to happen in the primal Chaos Immortal Mansion world, then even a refuge like the Void Stream wouldn't be safe. That was because the Lords of Death could kill their way into the Void Stream. The original Lord of the Death of the Primal Chaos Immortal Mansion could slaughter his way into any part of the Primal Chaos Immortal Mansion. To the Lord of the Death, there was no place in the Primal Chaos Immortal Mansion that he couldn't go. Of course, besides Tong Yu's place of closed-door cultivation, that was the core of the chaotic immortal abode world. Even the Lord of Death was unable to enter that place without Tong Yu's summons. However, all of this was already in the past. Now, the master of this world was Jiyu Fei. At this time, in the void, on the pavilion by the lake, 2 great experts erupted with battle intent, confronting each other. A great battle between quasi-supreme beings could erupt at any time. "Fighting is prohibited here," someone in the pavilion said in a low voice. "These 2 fellows are new here. They don't know the rules here," someone said. Just as everyone was watching the show, a figure suddenly walked in from outside. If you want to fight, please go outside and fight. This is Void Stream. The person arrived before Ju Chi and Ao Hai. He glanced at the two of them and said coldly. Everyone looked at this white-clothed woman. No one dared to say anything. Even Ju Chi and Ao Hai were the same. This was because this white-clothed woman was someone they could not afford to offend. Behind the white-robed woman, there were a few people. These people all had stern auras, and their auras were either tyrannical or fleeting. But everyone knew that these people were not to be trifled with. Zhao Hao, Yang Meng Long, and Ziyun Xiao and Ziyun from the Ziyun clan on Buzhou ancestral planet. Jiyu Fei had sent all of them into the primordial chaos immortal estate world to participate in this trial. That was because true combat experience, could not be obtained through seclusion. Only by participating in true life and death battles could one become a true expert. Although Zhao Hao and the others were Jiyu Fei's disciples, Jiyu Fei had no intention of helping them in this trial. Fellow Daoist Jiyu, we're just playing around. We're not really going to fight here. Ao Hai laughed. The battle intent on his body suddenly disappeared. Ao Hai was from the dragon race, and he was even related to the old turtle by blood. Regardless of whether it was in the mortal world or the heaven realm, the dragon race's primogenitor was the Grand Emperor. The fact that Ao Hai could become an ancestral dragon meant that the Tai Huang bloodline in his body wasn't too thin. That's right. How would we dare to break the rules here? Ju Chi also smiled. He was a member of the Ju clan of the ancients, so he naturally knew about Jiyu Ling's background. Jiyu Ling was Jiyu Fei's daughter, his only daughter. Who would dare to attack Jiyu Ling in this world? This was Jiyu Fei's world. As long as he willed it, Jiyu Fei would be able to kill them all. No matter where they were, as long as they were still in this world, they would die for sure. However, this wasn't Jiyu Fei's original intention. He wanted Jiyu Ling to contend against the other powerful existences, seizing good fortune for herself, allowing her to take the final leap and become a paragon of the extreme Dao. Hehe, actually if you guys want to fight, that's fine too. Zhao Hao suddenly laughed. After that, he waved his right hand as an item flew out from his hands, landing on the surface of the lake outside the pavilion. BZZ. That item quickly grew bigger and turned into a battle platform. Ancient battle platform? Everyone couldn't help but to be moved when they saw this. Who would have thought that Zhao Hao would bring an ancient battle platform with him? That was the place where life and death battles were conducted in ancient times. Those who stood on the battle platform were definitely enemies that couldn't live under the same sky as each other. Because only with such hatred would two supreme experts engage in a life and death battle. This. Dao friend Zhao Hao, please don't joke around. Ao Hai directly admitted defeat. He didn't want to fight against Ju Chi because the moment he stepped onto the battle platform, there would be no end to it until one party died. He wasn't crazy. Although he didn't like Ju Chi, the grudge between them wasn't at the point where one party would die. One must know that in a life and death battle, there would definitely be a victor. Fellow Daoist, please put away your dharmic Dao treasure. Ju Chi felt somewhat awkward. Okay, junior brother, stop playing. Jiyu Ling glanced at Zhao Hao as she spoke. Yes, senior sister. Zhao Hao laughed. With a wave of his right hand, the floating battle platform flew back to him, shrinking in size as it landed in his hands. Okay, let's see what good fortune each of us obtained. After that, we will take what we need. Jiyu Ling spoke to everyone. Drift Void was a place of refuge, but it was also a place where experts from all over the world could exchange resources. However, for truly heaven-defying good fortune, who would be willing to exchange it with others? Everyone in the pavilion was hesitating. I have a stalk of myriad stargrass here. I want to exchange for a fire attribute divine item. Does anyone have a fire attribute divine item? As Jiyu Ling spoke, she directly opened up her inner world and took out a stalk of strange grass. This stalk of grass actually emitted hazy astral light, as though there were countless constellations hanging on it. A stalk of grass that wasn't even half a foot tall actually exuded a powerful astral aura. This was simply unbelievable. As expected of the legendary myriad stargrass, some geniuses from the primogenitor realm exclaimed in admiration. This myriad stargrass was extremely important to experts who cultivated the astral Tao. It could change their physique, allowing their physique to transform into the astral battle physique, greatly increasing their cultivation base and combat prowess. Tao friend Jiyu, I have a true yang divine core here. Can I exchange it for your myriad stargrass? A quasi-paragon exuding boundless astral chi walked out. With a flip of his right hand, a black and swarthy stone the size of a fist appeared in his hands. This stone didn't exude any aura, it was like an ordinary stone that was burnt black. Is this the true yang divine core? Someone said disdainfully. Hey, I say, Xingkue, you want to use a useless stone to swindle Tao friend Gu's myriad stargrass? Aohai sneered. No matter how one looked at the stone in Xingkue's hand, it was just an ordinary black stone. He wanted to use such a worthless item to exchange for the myriad stargrass? Everyone looked at Xingkue in disbelief. True yang divine core? Jiyu Ling looked at the stone in Xingkue's hand and couldn't help but frown. This true yang divine core wasn't an ordinary item, it was a type of divine stone condensed from the inner core of the divine sun. This kind of divine stone contained the essence of the divine sun, and to those who cultivated the fire attribute Tao, it was definitely a supreme treasure that could only be found by luck. Can I inspect it? Jiyu Ling couldn't tell. Sure. Xingkue was straightforward and directly handed the stone in his hand to Jiyu Ling. Jiyu Ling only felt her hand sink. This black stone that was the size of a fist was actually very heavy, which surprised her a little. She directly reached out and scratched the stone. The surface broke, and a golden light shone out from the stone. In the next moment, everyone felt a blazing aura hit them. It's really the true yang divine core? Someone exclaimed. This was a divine stone that was nurtured from the core of the divine sun. Such a divine item contained the true yang essence, which was of great use to Jiyu Ling. After devouring the essence of the true yang divine core, her cultivation would definitely improve a lot. Let's exchange. Without hesitation, Jiyu Ling directly used the myriad stargrass to exchange for the true yang divine core. At this time, everyone took out the divine items they had obtained to exchange for the divine items they needed. For a moment, the aura in the pavilion was vast and mighty, and spiritual lights flickered. Chapter 4561. In the void stream, in a pavilion by the lake, the aura of immortals was boundless and the light of treasures flickered. A group of quasi-supremes who entered the Chaos Immortal Mansion world to participate in the trial took out their divine items. They exchanged for the divine items they needed. Jiyu Ling's harvest was not small. Not only did she successfully exchange for the true yang god nucleus, she also exchanged for the primal chaos flame. That was a divine flame born from the primal chaos. It was incomparably terrifying, much more powerful than the 3 true flames and the 9 heaven purple flames. Meng Long, Zhao Hao, Yang and the others also obtained the divine items they needed. Yang in particular, had an innate Tao aptitude. She used an ice phoenix tree to exchange for a heavenly Tao fruit, which could transform her constitution into the strongest innate Tao aptitude. Haha, not bad. This is an ancestral dragon's heart. Aohai laughed heartily. He had actually obtained an ancestral dragon's heart from a primordial realm quasi-supreme. This was the ancestral dragon's heart, which could further purify his dragon bloodline and allow him to cultivate a true ancestral dragon physique. He would be invincible in the 9 heavens. The Ju families, little Empyrean Ju Chi, who came from the human realm's desolate ancient Ju family, obtained a piece of 5-element god metal. This surprised and delighted him. A bunch of trash hiding here to amuse themselves. Just as everyone was rejoicing, a cold voice suddenly rang out, accurately entering everyone's ears. Who is it? Get the hell out here. Cowards hiding their heads but showing their tails. Inside the pavilion, a group of experts was shocked and angered when they heard this. They immediately released their divine sense, but to their surprise, they couldn't sense anything. Oh no. At this time, Gulling's expression suddenly changed. The next moment, She waved her sleeves and directly took Zhao Hao, Meng Long, and the others into her inner world. Then, she turned into a beam of divine light and rushed out of the pavilion. What's wrong? Everyone couldn't help but be shocked when they saw Gulling rush out. Boom! Just as everyone was bewildered, a huge hand suddenly descended from the sky and slammed the entire pavilion into the ground. A huge palm print appeared on the ground. A terrifying wave of energy erupted from the hand. Like a destructive storm, it swept out in all directions, destroying everything in its path. In just a few breaths of time, the entire flowing void was erased from the Chaos Immortal Mansion world. Even if there were powerful Dao runes protecting the void, it was useless. This attack that fell from the sky had the power to destroy heaven and earth. It was incomparably terrifying. What? The void trembled and a figure rushed out. It was the Zhu family's little heavenly venerate, Zhu Qi. When he turned around and saw this scene, he was scared out of his wits. If he had been a step slower, wouldn't he have been killed inexplicably? That scoundrel plotted against your ancestor. Ao Hai rushed out from the ground with disheveled hair. He was covered in blood, and one of the ancestral dragon's horns on his forehead was broken, with golden dragon blood seeping out. A violent ancestral dragon aura erupted from his body. His hair was disheveled, and he looked like he had gone mad. Buzz! At this moment, the void trembled and a yin-yang Daoist diagram broke out from the ground. The yin-yang Daoist diagram seemed to be splitting the sky, and the aura it exuded was incomparably terrifying. However, the yin-yang Daoist diagram disappeared in an instant, and two figures appeared in the void. These two people were the siblings Zi Yunxiao and Zi Yun-er. They were the strongest rising stars of the ancestral star Buzhou in the human realm. They walked out of the ancestral star Buzhou and fought everywhere. There were only a few in the entire human realm's younger generation who could be their opponents. Brother Wu, the power of your hand of extermination doesn't seem to be that great. Why did a few fish slip through the net? A voice came down from the 9 heavens. Chen Ju, what do you mean by this? How dare you look down on my Wu family's hand of extermination? Another voice sounded. Preposterous. At this moment, Jiyu Ling was enraged. Zhu Qi and Ao Hai were even more enraged because they almost died like the others. They didn't even know who killed them. The Ziyun siblings were also filled with killing intent. They locked onto the two auras in the sky. Boom! Suddenly, the entire world shook violently. Roar! A roar rang out, and a terrifying eternal aura instantly swept across the entire immortal mansion of chaos. Countless living beings in the immortal mansion of chaos were terrified. They all looked towards the depths of this world and saw a scene that they would never forget for the rest of their lives. They saw the sky collapse and the earth crack. A huge hand directly broke through this part of the world and slammed towards a huge figure that stood up on the ground. Rumble! The huge figure that was standing up from the ground was directly pressed into the ground by the huge hand that descended from the sky. What? Everyone was stunned. You dare to kill my successor? I will purge the entire world. An incomparably majestic voice came from another world and spread throughout the entire immortal mansion of chaos. It reached the souls of every living being in this world. What? Countless living beings in the immortal mansion of chaos were dumbfounded. Someone actually wanted to purge the entire world and kill billions of living beings? Master, save me. At this moment, a terrified and anxious voice was heard. The figure that was enveloped by the sky-splitting hand was actually dissipating. That was Tong Yu's great path body. Once it completely dissipated, he would die. Even a half-step eternal existence was not a match for it. This existence was definitely a true eternal one. We're dead. Who can save me? Countless living beings wailed. Even the countless quasi-supremes who had entered this world to train were dumbfounded. They all directly crushed their greater teleportation talismans. Rays of divine light shot into the sky from various parts of the immortal mansion of chaos and instantly disappeared. Outside the immortal mansion of chaos, one figure after another appeared. One quasi-supremes after another were sent out of the immortal mansion of chaos by the greater teleportation talismans. Seal. At this moment, The supreme existence that wanted to purge the entire immortal mansion of chaos made his move again. With a loud roar, the world was directly sealed. The greater teleportation talismans failed? Soon, someone exclaimed. The quasi-supremes who had entered the immortal mansion of chaos to train but had not had the time to crush their talismans were all dumbfounded. Because even if they crushed their greater teleportation talismans, they could no longer leave this world. How is this possible? The quasi-supremes panicked and hurriedly sent a message to their sects. However, they soon discovered that they were completely isolated from the outside world. No matter what methods they used, they could not contact anyone in the outside world. This is bad. Some quasi-supremes were scared out of their wits. Father, Jiyu Ling looked into the depths of this world. She was very confident in her father. The old ancestor has made his move. Let's kill to our heart's content. At this moment, the expert who had destroyed Flowing Void appeared. He walked down from the 9 heavens. It was a graceful man in white. The man in white was tall and slender, with sword-like eyebrows and starry eyes. He was incomparably handsome. Beside the man in white was a man in green. Compared to the dazzling man in white, this man in green looked incomparably ordinary. His appearance was ordinary, and he did not even have the aura of a cultivator on his body. However, no one dared to underestimate this man in green. So you're the ones who plotted against me? Come and die. Aohai had a fiery temper. A huge dragon shadow rushed out of his body, bearing its fangs and claws at the two people. Ignorant native. The white-robed young man looked at Aohai disdainfully. How dare a mere quasi-supreme act so presumptuously in front of him? Was he not courting death? The white-robed young man pointed a finger. Bam! Aohai did not even have time to scream before he was directly blown up by the white-robed young man's finger. He turned into a cloud of blood mist and dissipated in the void. Even Jiyu Ling was taken aback when she saw this scene. This guy killed a quasi-supreme being with a single finger. This was no ordinary quasi-supreme martial artist. It was an ancestral dragon quasi-supreme martial artist. Oh, Brother Wu, your god-killing finger is very powerful. The green-robed young man clapped his hands. Chimph, do I need you to tell me that? The young man surnamed Wu said coldly, looking very proud. The god-killing finger and the heaven-destroying palm were both top-notch divine abilities of the eternal divine dynasty. Naturally, top-notch divine abilities were not ordinary. The Wu family was a relative of the imperial family of the eternal divine dynasty. Preposterous. The Ziyun siblings and Ju Qi were both shocked and angry. The cultivation and combat strength of this person were too terrifying. Who could kill Aohai with a finger? Even Jiyu Ling could not do it. Poor Aohai, a dignified ancestral dragon, was killed with a finger. Presumptuous. Jiyu Ling could not stand it anymore. These two fellows were simply too arrogant. Your cultivation is not bad. Follow me and be my maid, Wu Fan said. What? The Ziyun siblings and Ju Qi, who knew Jiyu Ling's identity, looked at Wu Fan as if he was a monster. This guy actually wanted Jiyu Ling to be his maid. That was Jiyu Fei's daughter. Who was Jiyu Fei? He was an existence whose name shook the human world and the heaven realm. He killed an extreme supreme in the ancestral realm, dared to compete with a supreme king, and dared to kill a supreme lord with one hand. Jiyu Fei was a peerless and ruthless person. Who dared to provoke him? But now, someone actually wanted Jiyu Fei's daughter to be his maid. Ju Qi and the others thought that this white-robed young man was crazy. Ha! Jiyu Ling looked at the white-robed young man and suddenly burst into laughter. What are you laughing at? Being my maid is an opportunity that you have cultivated for several lifetimes. Don't make a mistake, Wu Fan said seriously as he looked at Jiyu Ling tsk. Jiyu Ling directly raised her middle finger at Wu Fan. Wu Fan was furious. He was about to attack. Chapter 4562. The peerless enemy directly broke through the barrier and killed his way into the primal chaos immortal mansion world. All the living beings in the primal chaos immortal mansion world were terrified to the extreme. A giant hand directly broke through the vault of heaven and smashed into the primal chaos immortal mansion world. This was a truly world-destroying attack. All the laws of heaven and earth were as fragile as thin paper in front of this giant hand. All the experts who saw this scene would never forget it for the rest of their lives. Even the half-step eternal realm Tong Yu wasn't a match for that peerless existence. He was firmly suppressed by that giant hand and was about to be obliterated by that giant hand. But at this moment, a sword light soared up from the earth and directly slashed towards the giant hand in the sky. With a flash of sword light, the giant hand that was suppressing Tong Yu was actually chopped off. What? Seeing this, all the powerful creatures were dumbfounded. Who was it that was attacking? Could it be Ji Yu Fei? Only Ji Yu Fei can contend against that kind of existence. A quasi-supreme from the primogenitor realm side. He came from the primogenitor realm and was well aware of Ji Yu Fei's past deeds in the primogenitor realm. This peerless and ruthless person had nearly overturned half of the primogenitor realm. He had even risked his life to kill the first primogenitor demon. In the past, Ji Yu Fei had fought the first primogenitor demon with his eternal realm cultivation. He had even forced the first primogenitor demon to not hesitate to use his life to open the reincarnation cycle and force Ji Yu Fei into it. However, although the first primogenitor demon had died, Ji Yu Fei was still alive and well. When the news reached the primogenitor realm, the primogenitor demons directly roared with unwillingness. Their strongest demon had died, but Ji Yu Fei was still alive. Didn't this mean that their strongest primogenitor demon had died in vain? In the primogenitor realm, the entire primogenitor demons wanted nothing more than to tear Ji Yu Fei to shreds. However, they couldn't do anything to Ji Yu Fei. The last time they attacked Ji Yu Fei even killed a progenitor fiend instead. It could be said that they suffered heavy losses. The death of a progenitor demons was definitely an irreparable loss for the progenitor demons. The power of the progenitor demons was once again weakened. They were the public enemies of the primogenitor realm and were surrounded by various factions. Without the first demon ancestor, the primogenitor demons were in a precarious situation. Not a single decent demon could be seen in the primogenitor realm. The great demons were all holed up in the Genesis Devilland and did not dare to come out to do evil. The origin Devilland was the source of the primogenitor world's devils. It was said that the depths of the origin Devilland were connected to the true primogenitor world. For countless years, no one had ever been able to enter the depths of the origin demon land. No one knew the shocking secrets of the depths of the origin demon land. At this moment, the silhouette of a fiend appeared outside the primal chaos immortal estate. Haha, Ji Yu Fei is in trouble. An old voice came from the primal chaos zone. The voice was filled with demonic nature. The eyes of the weaker cultivators turned red and they fell into a frenzied state. They attacked the people around them in a frenzy. An ancestor-level great demon? Someone sneered. Powerful auras rushed out from various parts of the primal chaos zone. Fellow Taoists, do you want to hunt demons together? A figure that looked like a divine sun walked out. He was like a sun in the sky, dispersing the chaotic aura within 100,000 miles. The power of the divine sun distorted the void. Great sun supremacy, you are not qualified to be my opponent. A ball of demonic aura appeared. The old voice came from the demonic aura. It was still filled with demonic nature. It was as if it could draw out the inner demons in the hearts of all living beings and make them demonize. What about me? At this moment, another tyrannical figure walked out. This person was surrounded by chaotic aura. His eyes were countless times brighter than the stars. A terrifying pressure spread out in all directions, making it hard for everyone to breathe. This was an extremely powerful existence. There was even a trace of eternal aura seeping out from his body. Di Jotian? That ball of demonic aura suddenly lit up with a bloody light. It was a pair of blood-colored demonic eyes that could pierce one's soul. The person who stood out was dressed in black. He held a battle spear in his hand. His battle intent soared into the 9 heavens, looking down on the world with disdain. He dared to fight against eternity. This madman, some people wanted to stand out to hunt demons. But when they saw Di Jotian, they immediately retreated. This Di Jotian was a ferocious person who dared to challenge Ji Yu Fei. Right now, Di Jotian was already Ji Yu Fei's in-name disciple. With such an identity, Di Jotian was even more unbridled. He dared to challenge anyone. I wonder if I'm qualified to fight against you. Di Jotian stared emotionlessly at the ball of demonic aura. It's been a long time since I've met a decent opponent. It's time for me to stretch my old bones. An old voice rang out. From his words, everyone could tell that this demon treated Di Jotian as an opponent. He directly ignored the Great Sun Supremacy. This made the Great Sun Supremacy feel extremely awkward. However, the other party was Di Jotian. He accepted it. One had to know that Di Jotian was a battle maniac. Even the top experts in the primogenitor realm didn't dare to underestimate this battle maniac. The Great Sun Supremacy came from the primogenitor realm. He was very clear about Di Jotian's battle strength. Ever since Di Jotian followed Ji Yu Fei, his cultivation seemed to have increased by leaps and bounds. He even had a trace of eternal aura on him. He was most likely going to take that step. Haha, since Brother Di is making a move, I'll just watch from the sidelines. The Great Sun Supremacy laughed and left the server. Di Jotian only nodded at the Great Sun Supremacy and didn't say anything. We can't miss this battle. Very quickly, the news spread out and more experts appeared in the nearby regions. Kill. The demon in the demonic aura roared. Boundless demonic aura suddenly exploded and enveloped 100,000 miles. It directly drowned Di Jotian in the boundless demonic aura. It was as though the entire world had suddenly fallen into darkness. The terrifying demonic aura suddenly increased. Any living being that came into contact with the demonic aura underwent a shocking change. A small tree that grew in the chaos actually turned into a demonic tree under the corrosion of the demonic aura. It attacked the surrounding living beings in a frenzy. Die. An expert casually waved his hand and an extremely sharp sword light flashed by. It directly cut the demonic tree in half and turned it into dust. Even a quasi-supreme expert's arm had only been touched by a trace of demonic chi, and his entire arm had turned black. Black scales had appeared on his arm, and his 5 fingers had become thin and long, like 5 small swords. He had been demonized in an instant. That quasi-supreme expert directly cut off his left arm. Kill. Di Jotian also moved. With a roar, a divine light suddenly appeared in the demonic aura. Rays of divine light directly broke through the layers of demonic aura and rushed out. Boom. A huge collision broke out in the middle of the devil chi, and the extremely violent energy waves spread out in all directions, terrifying to the extreme. The entire chaos zone was shaking. The eruption of the great battle attracted the attention of most of the supreme supremacies. However, the great battle in the immortal mansion world had alarmed the supreme existences of the 4 great realms. The everlasting realm. There's really an everlasting realm in this world? Some of the ancient existences exclaimed. Today, my sword will slay the everlasting. Ji Yu Fei's voice spread throughout the entire chaotic realm. Then, countless people saw an unforgettable scene. They saw a sword light actually cut into the chaos and a huge figure was slain by it. Shocking blood sprinkled from the sky. One of the drops landed on the ground and instantly turned into a sea of blood. The stench of blood filled the air. While Ji Yu Fei was fighting the supreme existences, Guling was fighting Chen Ju and Wu Fan. Ju Qi and the Ziyun siblings also went up to help. Chen Ju and Wu Fan's cultivation was really terrifying. Even though they were fighting 2 against 4, they were still not at a disadvantage. The more Guling fought, the more shocked she became. These 2 fellas were actually devouring their power. Didn't this mean that this fella was already standing in an invincible position? Heaven-destroying palm. Wu Fan directly used his strongest mystique. A terrifying destructive power enveloped the surroundings. Without any suspense, Guling and the others were directly sent flying. After Guling stabilized herself, her face suddenly flushed red. In the next moment, she spat out a mouthful of blood. She could barely stand. Other than the Ziyun siblings, Ju Qi's injuries were the heaviest. He continuously coughed out blood. Can't even withstand a single blow. Wu Fan was incomparably arrogant. However, he did have the confidence to be arrogant. Yin-yang split heaven and earth. The Ziyun siblings made their move. A yin-yang diagram appeared in the void. In the next moment, a heaven-devouring power surged out from the yin-yang diagram. Boundless heaven and earth essence gathered towards the yin-yang diagram. The void of the entire world started to tremble. Reincarnation? Who are you trying to scare? Chen Ju laughed coldly. However, a scene that left Chen Ju dumbfounded appeared. The yin-yang world that the Ziyun siblings had conjured had actually sucked Wu Fan in. How could this be? Chen Ju was also dumbfounded by this scene. Just as everyone was rejoicing, a loud sound suddenly rang out. The void suddenly shattered, and a figure directly rushed out from the shattered void. This person was none other than Wu Fan, who had been sent into the yin-yang void by the Ziyun siblings. This Wu Fan was simply too heaven-defying. He was simply like a cockroach that couldn't be killed. It was truly difficult to kill him. However, if they were to be struck by his killer move, Gulling and the others would be severely injured. This was extremely disadvantageous for them. Kill. I don't believe that I can't kill this demon. Ju Qi roared. In the next moment, he took out an item. It was a scroll. A scroll that emitted a supreme aura. Boom. Without any hesitation, Ju Qi immediately opened the scroll. In the next moment, countless flying swords rushed out from the scroll. They covered the sky and pierced towards Wu Fan and Chen Ju at an extremely fast speed. Such a large-scale attack had sealed off all escape routes for the two powerhouses. This. Chapter 4563. It was not without reason that the beings of Eternal World believed themselves to be a cut above the rest. The worldly laws of Eternal World were definitely much stronger than those of Primal Worlds like Primal World and Primal World. In Eternal World, as long as one's cultivation base reached a certain level, one could assail the extreme Tao stage without any qualms. There was also no need to worry about disturbing the heavenly Tao. Although Wu Fan and Chen Ju from Eternal World were also at the quasi-supreme stage, they were stronger than Ju Qi, the Ju family's little heavenly sovereign, Ziyun siblings and the others. That was an indisputable fact. Even though the four of them had joined forces, Wu Fan was still beating them to the point of coughing out blood. That was strength, a strength that could sweep through those on the same level. As for Chen Ju, he was also incomparably powerful. Every now and then, he would send Jiyu Ling flying, showing no tenderness towards the fairer sex. Two young experts from Eternal World had actually forced Jiyu Ling and the others into a desperate situation. This was something that had never happened before in the four great worlds. Wang. Ju Qi had no choice but to use his trump card. A scroll unfurled in his hand and countless flying swords rushed out from the scroll, blotting out the sky as they slashed towards Wu Fan and Chen Ju. The entire world was filled with extremely sharp sword energy fluctuations. Every single sword light was at the extreme Tao stage. This was a scroll created by an extreme Tao Supreme. This was Ju Qi's trump card. If it were not for the fact that he was forced into a corner by these two fellows, he would never use it. That was because it would disappear the moment he used it. In the next moment, a set of golden battle armor appeared on Wu Fan's body. His entire body shone with a myriad of golden light as a supreme aura spread out from his body. A series of clashing sounds rang out. In that instant, who knew how many flying swords slashed Wu Fan's body, but all of them were blocked by the battle armor on his body. This, Jiyu Ling and the others were shocked. As for Chen Ju, endless divine runes of the great Tao rushed out from his body. Those Tao runes intertwined around him like a giant cocoon, enveloping him. The countless flying swords slashed the giant cocoon, but all of them instantly disappeared, melted away. What? Ju Qi was shocked to the extreme. This was a scroll given to him by a peerless existence from the Ju family. Sealed within the scroll was a portion of that peerless existence's power. To be more precise, the scroll could unleash a strike from that supreme being. What kind of Tao artifact is that? Ju Qi was inexplicably shocked. The Tao artifact used by the other party was too powerful. It could actually block his attack so easily. He even doubted whether his scroll could really unleash an attack from an extreme Dao honorable. Haha, this kind of attack that seals its power on a scroll is simply unworthy. Wu Fan laughed heartily. What did you say? Zhu Qi was furious. On the other hand, Ji Yuling's expression became very solemn. These two fellows' methods and Dao artifacts seemed to be very impressive. Was there really a greater world in this world that was better than the primogenitor world and the primogenitor world? Ji Yuling sensed something familiar from the aura of the Dao treasures on their bodies. She had sensed something similar from her father. Eternal, Gulling was shocked. Could the Dao treasure on his body be the legendary eternal Dao treasure? If that was the case, then these two fellows were already invincible. If their Dao artifacts were truly eternal Dao artifacts, then even if they stood still and let Ji Yuling and the others attack them, they would definitely not be injured in the slightest. All right, it's my turn. Wu Fan stared at Zhu Qi with a sinister smile. In the next moment, his body trembled and a clanging sound immediately came from his body. In the next moment, rays of golden sword radiance rushed out from his golden armor and pierced towards Zhu Qi. Golden Dao patterns circled and intertwined on each golden sword radiance. Each sword radiance emitted an immortal aura. Damn it! Zhu Qi held the scroll in his hand horizontally and blocked the attack. However, the golden sword radiance directly pierced through the scroll and Zhu Qi's body. This made Zhu Qi inexplicably shocked. Oh no! Zhu Qi only felt that all the origin qi in his body was gathering towards the wound. It was constantly being destroyed by a force that had invaded his body. This was a great Dao injury. Under normal circumstances, it was very difficult to recover from a great Dao injury. However, as the little heavenly lord of the Zhu clan in the human realm, Zhu Qi's cultivation was also extremely powerful. He had already taken half a step into the extreme Dao realm. He channeled his mystic art with all his might, wanting to force out the destructive force that had invaded his body. However, that force was like maggots in his bones and could not be expelled at all. How is this possible? Zhu Qi hurriedly retreated. The scroll in front of him was directly sliced into pieces by the golden sword radiance. At this moment, Ji Yuling moved. She took a step forward and instantly appeared in front of Zhu Qi. The countless golden sword gleams that were piercing through stopped several feet away from her. An invisible force spread out from Ji Yuling's body and blocked all the attacks. What? Wu Fan and Chen Zhu were both shocked. What was going on? No one dared to act rashly. Buzz! A loud sound came from Ji Yuling's body. In the next moment, her outer clothes were torn apart, revealing the sky-blue immortal gold armor underneath. On the armor, countless Dao patterns intertwined. An eternal aura seeped out from Ji Yuling's armor. An eternal Dao treasure? When Wu Fan and Chen Zhu saw the armor on Ji Yuling's body, their eyes immediately lit up. At the same time, they were extremely shocked. How could someone in this world obtain an eternal Dao treasure? An eternal Dao treasure was something that only an eternal being could refine. Naturally, its power was incomparably powerful. A true eternal Dao treasure could kill an extreme supreme being. Let's go. Wu Fan and Chen Zhu immediately turned and fled. That was a true eternal Dao treasure. Once the power of the Dao treasure was activated by the other party, they would die a terrible death. Qiankuan / Ji Yuling did not hesitate at all. She immediately activated the sky-blue immortal gold armor and slashed at Wu Fan and Chen Zhu who were high up in the sky. That was a supreme sword radiance formed from the power of the sky-blue immortal gold armor. Roar! Wu Fan desperately activated the golden armor on his body. Countless golden Dao patterns exploded from the armor, densely packed together. It was as though there was no end to it. However, the sword radiance flashed past his body and his entire body stopped. In the next moment, a gust of wind blew and Wu Fan's entire body collapsed. He was actually sliced into thousands of pieces by the sword aura. Even the golden armor on his body could not protect him. In front of a real eternal Taoist treasure, any Taoist treasure was just a piece of trash. Chapter 4564. How is this possible? Wu Fan's primordial spirit was slashed by the immortal sword light formed by Ji Yuling's sky-blue immortal golden battle armor. No matter what life-saving techniques he cultivated, they were all useless at this moment. They couldn't save his life at all. Boom. Wu Fan's primordial spirit instantly split into billions of clones that rushed in all directions. Some of them even charged into the bodies of some living beings and forcibly took over their bodies. However, a scene that left everyone dumbfounded happened. Countless figures were quickly annihilated and dissipated into the void. Up in the sky, countless figures were constantly being created and destroyed. However, their numbers were rapidly decreasing, and one figure after another disappeared into the void. Those were the primordial spirit clones that Wu Fan had cultivated. Even though he had created billions of clones, he still couldn't escape this calamity. Soon, there were only a few dozen figures left in the sky. Even the primordial spirit clones that had taken over the bodies of other living beings dissipated directly into the bodies of those living beings. The powerful primordial spirit power had benefited those living beings for nothing. I can't accept this. In the end, there was only one figure left in the sky. Wu Fan's primordial spirit only uttered those 3 words before disappearing into the void with the wind. Death in body and soul was the most thorough way for cultivators, especially powerful ones. They wouldn't even be able to convert to the ghost Tao. Eternal world. To the east of the eternal divine dynasty's territory was an endless sea. The land that the Wu family of the East Sea had rented was not on land, but on the sea. An angry roar suddenly came from a divine island 30,000 miles away in the East Sea. The peace of the entire island was instantly broken. The primitive forests around the island were immediately thrown into chaos. Countless wild beasts were frightened and fled in all directions. Roar. A huge figure stood up from a remote valley. Its mountain-like body was covered in thick scales. A violent aura erupted from the beast. No other powerful wild beasts could be seen within a radius of 10,000 miles above the island. Lingxiao Island in the East Sea was rented by the Wu family. The island was divided into a part of the sea and a part of the sky. On the divine island that floated high in the sky, there were pavilions, terraces, and waterfalls dotted the landscape. At the top of the island was an ancient shrine. This was the ancestral hall of the Wu clan. Who dares to kill my bloodline? An old voice came from the ancestral hall of God Island. The higher-ups of the Wu clan were all shocked, especially the leader of the Wu clan. The Wu family head was originally in seclusion, but it was impossible for him to come out. Wu Fan is dead. The Wu family's patriarch was shocked to the extreme. Although Wu Fan wasn't an extreme supremacy, he was already half a step into the supremacy stage. He was a quasi-supremacy. Moreover, Wu Fan was also wearing a golden battle armor, a half-step eternal Tao artifact. With this quasi-eternal Tao artifact protecting him, who could kill him? Even the strongest existence among the extreme Tao supremes couldn't kill Wu Fan, unless it was a super antique half-step into the eternal realm. However, it was impossible for such an existence to exist in the lower realm, because the lower realm's heaven and earth laws weren't perfect enough. It was difficult to give birth to half-step eternal realm existences. Of course, there were some exceptions, because the primal world could still give birth to such existences. However, such existences couldn't possibly deal with a little guy like Wu Fan. In any case, Wu Fan was dead, and he had died in the lower realm. This was an indisputable fact. The death of the Wu clan's divine son was definitely an earth-shattering event for the Wu clan of the East Sea. After all, it was not easy to cultivate a divine son. The price they had to pay was unimaginable. Of course, the Wu clan of the East Sea wasn't like the eternal godly dynasty, which focused on cultivating a divine son. The Wu clan had 3 divine sons and a goddess, but now that Wu Fan was dead, the Wu clan only had 2 divine sons and 1 goddess. Wu Fan's death wasn't a bad thing for some people in the Wu clan. Wu Fan actually died in the lower realm. What a surprise! In the Wu clan's ancestral land, on an island above Heaven Soaring Island in the East Sea, several people were sitting in a secret chamber. The leader was an old man with white hair and brows. The person who spoke was a young man in a white robe. Although the man was just sitting down, an extremely domineering aura emanated from his body. As he looked around, he exuded a domineering aura. It wasn't a secret that the Wu clan had produced an overlord. Wu Ba was one of the 3 divine sons cultivated by the Wu clan of the East Sea. His eternal overlord body technique was one of the few heavenly skills in the entire celestial continent. His cultivation was even higher than Wu Fan's, and he was the strongest divine son of the Wu clan of the East Sea. Haha, it's good that Wu Fan died. Good that he died. Another young man who looked a little like Wu Ba laughed. Second brother, it's better to say this here. If word of this gets out, it'll be very troublesome. Wu Ba said indifferently. Yes, big brother. He still had a gloating look on his face. Wu Fan's death gave Wu Ba's bloodline the upper hand in the battle for the position of clan master. Wu Fan used to be Wu Ba's strongest opponent, but now, Wu Ba had no opponents. If everything went according to plan, Wu Ba would be the next clan master. Don't be too happy yet. After all, the position of clan master has always been occupied by the bloodline of the ancestor. Although we are also the main bloodline of the clan, we are still not as good as the direct descendant. The old man said in a low voice. In a large clan like the Wu clan, they paid particular attention to the order of seniority. The eldest bloodline was the direct descendant. Although the other bloodlines also had the same ancestor, they were still not as good as the direct descendants. It was an indisputable fact that the direct descendants of the Wu clan were the strongest. Of course, there had been a clan master who was not from the direct descendants of the Wu clan. However, it was extremely rare in the long history of the Wu clan. That's right, we can't be careless, a middle-aged man said with a serious expression. He was Wu Ba's father. Granduncle, what do you think we should do next? The middle-aged man asked the old man carefully. We don't need to do anything. We just need to listen to the clan master's orders. The old man said coldly. The crowd nodded. Now was the time to deal with the changes. At the same time, in another place in the Wu clan's ancestral ground, someone was talking in a secret chamber. Cousin died just like that. I don't believe it. A woman in a purple outfit said. His life medallion is broken. You still don't believe it? Another woman in a white outfit said calmly. Once a life medallion was broken, it meant that the owner of the life medallion had died. Wu Fan was definitely dead. This caused a huge commotion in the Wu clan. Sigh. The woman sighed, feeling a little sad. However, her expression soon returned to being as cold as ice. Wu Fan is dead. Wu Ba will be even more difficult to deal with. A middle-aged woman frowned. Even if the sky falls, there's still the tall one to hold it up. Let Wu Ba and Wu Yarrow fight for it. The woman said coldly. Wu Ba and Wu Yarrow were 2 of the 3 divine princes of the Wu clan of the East Sea. With Wu Fan's death, it was time to determine a winner between them. Let's wait and see, the middle-aged woman said. At that moment, countless cultivators had gathered in the ancestral land of the Wu clan. Under the order of the Wu clan leader, countless cultivators entered the other world through the realm gate. Just a few hours before the experts of the Wu clan set out, within the world of the primal chaos immortal manor, Ji Ling activated the sky blue immortal gold battle armor and directly transformed into an invincible goddess of war, and she crushed Chen Ju to the point he had no way out. Aren't you very powerful? Ji Ling's punch made Chen Ju's nose bleed. His face looked like it was dyed red. Aren't you high and mighty? Bam! Ji Ling stomped her foot on Chen Ju's head, causing him to fall from the sky. Boom! A huge crater was formed on the ground. Dust flew everywhere. Roar! Chen Ju was furious. He roared at the sky as if he had gone mad. Kill me if you can. Come on, kill me. Chen Ju shouted crazily. Kill you? That's too easy for you. Ji Ling suddenly smiled. With a wave of her right hand, she sent Chen Tian flying through the distance of 1,000 zhong. His face immediately swelled up, and over 10 teeth flew out of his mouth. When had Chen Ju, who came from the Chen clan of the Eternal World, ever been in such a wretched state? He wanted to kill himself. I'll fight you to the death. Chen Ju charged at Ji Ling with disheveled hair. Ji Ling waved her hands. 10 beams of sword light shot out from her hands, instantly piercing Chen Ju's body and causing a mist of blood to spray out. However, Chen Ju did not defend himself at all. He allowed the beams of sword light to pierce through his body. Then, he pounced forward and grabbed Ji Ling. His speed was extremely fast. Moreover, he had used a secret technique of the Chen clan. Even Ji Ling could not avoid his desperate pounce. "Everyone, let's die together." Chen Ju went completely mad. His entire body shone with countless rays of light as a terrifying power of destruction erupted from his body. Oh no! Everyone retreated far away when they saw this. Self-destruct. Ji Ling also seemed to be startled. Boom! Before Ji Ling could finish her thought, Chen Ju's entire body exploded. The violent power of destruction engulfed Ji Ling in an instant. Daoist Ju, Ju Qi, the Ziyun siblings, and the others were scared out of their wits when they saw this. They hurriedly activated their Dao weapons to protect themselves and charged into the distance. Even so, they were still blown away by the explosion of destructive energy, and the divine light emitted by their protective Dao tools dimmed instantly. Cracks appeared on the shield that Ju Qi was using to protect himself, as if it could shatter at any time. This made him extremely frightened. The Ziyun siblings worked together to activate a bronze bell. Although they managed to block the power of destruction, the runes on the bronze bell dimmed as well. Ji Ling, the experts watching the battle from afar, were extremely nervous. That madman actually self-destructed. That was the self-destruction of a quasi-supreme. Ji Ling is dead. Chapter 4565. Chen Ju actually self-destructed. This shocked everyone to the extreme. It should be known that this meant that both his body and soul would be destroyed. A powerful creature would never self-destruct unless it was forced into a dead end. This was the final method to perish together with the enemy. Rumble. The moment Chen Ju self-destructed, it was as terrifying as 100,000 volcanoes erupting at the same time. Everything that belonged to Chen Ju instantly collapsed and turned into dust. Even his inner world was the same. The destructive power that erupted from the collapse of his inner world was even more terrifying and powerful. It was enough to destroy heaven and earth. Even a quasi-supreme would be stunned. Moreover, Chen Ju came from the eternal world. The great Tao that he cultivated was incomparably powerful. The power of his self-destruction was naturally much more terrifying. A terrifying storm of destruction swept out in all directions. Everything in its path was obliterated, no longer existing. The area within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles was instantly turned into dust. Some powerful creatures that were watching the battle in the surroundings were affected. A powerful quasi-supreme was instantly turned into a mist of blood. Both his body and soul were destroyed. Even Ju Qi and the Ziyun siblings were coughing up blood, especially Ju Qi. His entire body was covered in cracks, and he looked like he was about to fall apart. The little heavenly venerate from the Ju clan of the ancient desolation was quite frightened. He looked down at the shield-type Dao artifact in his hand and saw that it was also covered in countless cracks. Almost 80% of the Dao patterns within it had been obliterated. I actually destroyed a quasi-supreme Dao artifact. Ju Qi felt extremely pained. It should be known that this was a quasi-supreme Dao artifact. Moreover, it was a protective Dao artifact. If it wasn't for the protection of this Dao artifact, he would probably have to crush the greater teleportation talisman and leave the chaotic immortal mansion world. However, if he did that, he would have to give up on this trial. Unless he could get Ji Fei's permission, he wouldn't be able to enter the chaotic immortal mansion world again. Ju Qi naturally didn't want to leave just like that. Fellow Ji Ling, Ju Qi felt a great impact. He looked forward and saw dust rising into the sky. The sky was dark and the earth was dark. A terrifying aura of destruction rushed towards him, causing his soul to tremble. He quickly took out a god pill and swallowed it. In the next moment, his entire body erupted with a type of 5-colored divine light. That was the 5 elements divine pill, condensing 5 elements spiritual essence. The pill could dissolve within his body. The cracks on his body disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this moment, the Ziyun siblings also took out divine pills and swallowed them. They had to recover their cultivation and battle prowess as soon as possible. Otherwise, it would be very dangerous here. As for the core region where Chen Tian had self-destructed, everything seemed to have been destroyed. It was as if nothing was left behind. Ju Qi and the rest could not sense Jiyu Ling's aura at all. They were all bewildered. Was Jiyu Ling really dead? That was Jiyu Fei's daughter. Naturally, Jiyu Fei's daughter would not die so easily. However, Chen Ju was a formidable figure from Eternal World. His self-destruction was no small matter. Ju Qi and Zi Yun were only at the periphery of the explosion. Even so, they had still ended up suffering from serious injuries. One could only imagine what kind of attack Jiyu Ling, who was at the core of the explosion, would suffer. As Chen Ju was blowing himself up, an ancient primogenitor within the ancestral grounds of the Chen clan in Eternal World woke up from its slumber. An extremely powerful divine sense instantly enveloped the entire Chen clan's ancestral land. Chen Ju has died. An ancient voice rang out in the Chen clan's ancestral land, spreading throughout the entire ancestral land. At this moment, deep within the Chaos Immortal Mansion, Jiyu Fei was engaged in a fierce battle with the unparalleled existence that had crossed over from another world. Boom! The unparalleled existence that had crossed over from another world possessed a monstrous battle prowess. With a wave of his hand, he could shatter the void. The world here was extremely stable. To be able to shatter the void here was naturally extraordinary. Bam! Jiyu Fei's fist seemed slow, but it blocked the unparalleled existence's attack. In the end, they killed their way into the primal chaos. No one knew the result of the battle. The unparalleled existence had retreated and Jiyu Fei had returned. However, it did not take long for a gate of light to appear within the Chaos Immortal Mansion. Listen up, all of you. The people from Eternal World will also be participating in this trial. If you can kill them, then kill them ruthlessly. If you can't, then just hide. Jiyu Fei's voice spread throughout the Chaos Immortal Mansion. At the same time, it reached the ears of every living being there. What? Everyone was shocked. The people from Eternal World were coming. Some were brimming with fighting spirit, while others were feeling uneasy. That was the legendary unparalleled world, after all. The living beings there were pitilessly powerful. Humph! Are the people from Eternal World invincible? Someone said disdainfully. After the battle between Jiyu Fei and the unparalleled existence had retreated. However, he made a condition. The people from Eternal World must also participate in this trial. At this time, the gate of light floating high in the sky suddenly opened, and a figure walked out. Everyone's eyes lit up when they saw who it was. It was a pitilessly beautiful woman in white. Although she looked weak, the aura she exuded was tyrannical to the extreme. Swoosh! The white-robed woman took a step forward and instantly disappeared into the void. She was nowhere to be seen. Then, experts of the younger generation from Eternal World kept crossing over to the Chaos Immortal Mansion. Most of them were from the major forces of the Eternal Divine Dynasty. Soon, a great battle broke out in the Chaos Immortal Mansion. A woman in white was fighting with two experts from the human realm outside a valley. Violent energy fluctuations erupted, attracting the attention of countless experts. The woman in white was extremely powerful. Soon, the two experts who were fighting with her were killed by her. She directly rushed into the valley, broke through the layers of killing arrays, and took away a quasi-immortal herb. How could you agree to that guy's condition? At this time, in the deepest part of the Chaos Immortal Mansion, Jiyu Fei was talking to Old Tortoise and the others. The living beings of Eternal World, on the whole, are definitely much stronger than us. Old Tortoise's uncle said in a deep voice. What are you afraid of? Although the living beings of Eternal World are powerful, we are not to be trifled with. Old Tortoise's fighting spirit erupted. He wanted to stimulate all his potential in a battle of life and death. There is an immortal herb here. If the people of Eternal World get it, it will be a great loss, a golden-haired young man said. A golden-haired youth said. He was Yuan Hong, the sacred prince of the golden spirit ape lineage. Hehe, who can take that thing away? A figure shrouded in black smoke sneered. Playing tricks. Chapter 4566. Someone from the Eternal World wanted to participate in the Primal Chaos Immortal Mansion World's trial. This was a big deal. The top forces of the four worlds were all alarmed. That was the legendary Eternal World. Since ancient times, it had never appeared before anyone from the four worlds. For the top experts of the four worlds, the Eternal World was a legend. Furthermore, it was a legend that had yet to be verified. But now, the legend had come true. The legendary Eternal Supreme Paradise. The supreme experts of the most ancient races of the four worlds came out in shock. Even some ancient ancestors who had been in seclusion could no longer sit still. Some of the ancient ancestors who had been lying in their coffins smashed the lids of their coffins. Like corpses, they appeared in the world again, shocking the experts of the various worlds. For these ancient ancestors, there was no hope for this life. They had wanted to seal themselves and come out in the next life to search for opportunities there. But now, they saw hope again. Enter the Eternal Realm. All the ancient ancestors who were stuck at the peak of the extreme Tao became excited. They immediately headed for the boundary between the Celestial Realm and the Primal Beginning Realm. This was the boundary between the two worlds. The laws of the two worlds intertwined, collided, and obliterated each other, forming a scene that seemed to have existed before the world was created. It was like a world of primal chaos. However, this was not a world of primal chaos. When the laws of the two worlds collided, primal chaos lightning would be produced. This primal chaos lightning was definitely one of the most terrifying lightning in the world. It could tear apart the bodies of saints. It was very dangerous for saints to walk in this place. Any living being below the saint level would be instantly killed by the lightning if they touched this primal chaos lightning. They would be turned to ashes, completely destroyed in body and soul. Only quasi-supreme existences could walk in this place that was similar to primal chaos. At this time, one powerful figure after another rushed into this chaotic land, completely ignoring the chaotic laws here. The primal chaos lightning that could tear apart the bodies of saints couldn't even touch the clothes of these ancient ancestors. Human realm, celestial realm, primal beginning realm. No one knew how many great mysteries were hidden in these four worlds. But there was no doubt that there were many ancient ancestors in the four worlds. Ancient ancestors were peerless existences. Every ancient ancestor was an extreme Tao Supreme. Their background was big enough to scare people to death. At this time, within the primal chaos, Di Jotien was fighting against a demon. Their battle caused the primal chaos to shatter, and blood dyed his long robes. He was a war emperor above the 9 heavens, and the battle spear in his hand pierced through the heaven and earth. However, the one he was fighting was a demon from Eternal World. Even though this demon was not an eternal great demon, his cultivation base was extremely formidable. He was practically invincible amongst those on the same level as him. Haha, I didn't expect there to be such a character in the lower realm. Follow me. The great demon laughed and attacked. The blood-colored demonic palm enveloped the entire world. Rumble, the void that was enveloped by the blood-colored demonic palm was directly annihilated. Kill. Although Di Jotien was injured, his battle intent was even stronger than before. The battle spear in his hand shone with an unprecedented radiance. The entire chaotic zone was shaking. Emperor moves the 9 heavens. The ancient ancestors watching from afar couldn't help but exclaim. Boom. The blood-colored demonic palm pressed down and collided with the divine radiance that shot into the sky. There was a loud explosion, and terrifying energy swept out in all directions. At the border of the two worlds, one bottomless crack after another appeared. Is this the power and terror of a supreme existence at the end of the extreme Tao? Someone under the protection of the ancient ancestors witnessed this battle. Di Jotien was directly smashed into the ground. The blood-colored demonic palm that had descended from the sky also dissipated in the void, and a drop of demonic blood dripped from the sky. Good. I don't even know how long it's been since I've been injured or bled. You're the only one in the past 100,000 years who can hurt me. A giant blood-colored demonic eye appeared in the void. The two demonic eyes seemed to be connected to two blood-colored worlds, and they emitted a soul-stirring demonic light. Boom. At this moment, the ground suddenly exploded, and a figure rushed out from the ground. Endless divine light erupted from his body, as if a divine sun had appeared in the primal chaos zone. Di Jyotian had fought all over the 9 heavens in pursuit of the strongest power. He had never been in such a difficult situation before. His opponent was too strong, and he even felt helpless. However, he couldn't admit defeat so easily. He wanted to fight to his heart's content. Being my subordinate isn't a bad thing for you. Don't make a mistake. The demon's indifferent voice rang out. If you want to fight, then fight. If not, then scram. Di Jyotian stared at the 2 blood-colored eyes in front of him, the spear in his hand vibrating. Do you want to die? Fine, I'll fulfill your wish. The demon's voice turned cold. Whoosh. The 2 demonic eyes in the void suddenly shot out countless blood-colored demonic lights. Each beam pierced through the void and instantly pierced through Di Jyotian. Countless rays of blood-colored light rushed out of Di Jyotian's body. What shocked everyone was that Di Jyotian's blood kept flying out. What kind of demonic technique is this? The ancient ancestors who were watching from the side were extremely shocked. This demonic technique could actually devour the opponent's chi and blood. It was clearly a terrifying demonic technique. Chi and blood were life to any living creature. Once their chi and blood were completely devoured, even someone at Di Jyotian's level would die. This was because both the Tao body and the primordial spirit existed on the basis of chi and blood. What? Even Di Jyotian was shocked. He could feel his life rapidly draining away. His flesh and blood were shrinking. In just an instant, he had become much thinner. What pure essence chi! The demon from the eternal world exclaimed. Di Jyotian's chi and blood were definitely a great supplement for him. Its effect was no less than that of an immortal divine medicine. Di Jyotian used a secret technique. An immortal blade of light rushed out of his brow and instantly severed the chi and blood that were rushing out of his body. Oh! The demonic light shining out of the demon's blood-colored demonic eyes grew even stronger. The other party could actually sever his devouring demonic power. Since when were the living creatures of the lower realms so powerful? As Di Jyotian was fighting the demon from the eternal world, the ancient ancestors from the 4 great worlds kept arriving. At this time, even the demon from the eternal world could not help but be moved. This is a demon from the eternal world. Capture him and you will know the secret of the eternal world. Someone in the dark shouted at the top of his lungs. What? A demon from the eternal world? The ancient ancestors from the 4 great worlds were both shocked and overjoyed. The allure of the eternal world was absolutely fatal. Many of them were tempted. In just an instant, the demon with the blood-colored demonic eyes sensed that at least a dozen ancient ancestors' divine senses had locked onto him. Who is so wicked as to plot against me? Chapter 4567. A demon from the eternal world? The ancient ancestors who were watching the battle grew excited. If they could capture this guy, wouldn't they be able to find out the truth about the legendary eternal world? The eternal world was the legendary place where one could obtain the eternal grand Tao. Those who were stuck at the peak of the extreme Tao had lived for countless years. Their only goal in life was to become an eternal one and jump out of this chess game. Since this demon came from the eternal world, the ancient ancestors would not let him leave so easily. Almost at the same time, 5 ancient ancestors charged at the demon. Powerful ancient ancestor auras spread out, shaking the entire primal chaos zone. What? You want to gang up on me? The blood-red demon's eyes flashed with a terrifying demonic light. If you think so, then yes. One of the ancient ancestors sneered. TCH, everyone has the right to kill demons. An ancient ancestor said righteously. Kill you, my ass. The demon's eyes flashed and a blood-red demonic light shot out. It pierced through the void and instantly arrived before the righteous ancient ancestor. What? The ancient ancestor was shocked. He wanted to dodge, but it was impossible. He could only block with both hands. His palms shone with dazzling divine light. His palms looked like they were forged from immortal gold. An unimaginably powerful fluctuation of the extreme Tao spread out in all directions. However, The demonic light instantly pierced through the ancient ancestor's hands, and then it pierced through the ancient ancestor's Tao body. Roar. The ancient ancestor roared and his peak extreme Tao power burst out. His hands and Tao body, which had been pierced by the demonic light, healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, the ancient ancestor's wounds had only just healed when they exploded again. A mist of blood filled the air. This was a grand Tao injury. It was not easy for the ancient ancestor to expel the opponent's grand Tao power from his body. Reckless fool. The demonic aura from the demon's eyes grew stronger and stronger. Soon, the wounds on the ancient ancestor's body grew bigger. He could feel the demonic power invading his body and quickly erasing his life force. At this rate, it wouldn't be long before the ancient ancestor died. Because the demon's Tao was stronger than the ancient ancestor's Tao, the ancient ancestor's Tao was suppressed and destroyed. In the end, there was only one outcome for the ancient ancestor, and that was death. Save me. The ancient ancestor was truly frightened. Me. An ancient ancestor came to the other ancient ancestor's back and placed his right hand on the other's back. In the next moment, a powerful force of the great path surged from his hand into the ancient ancestor's body. Rumble. A shocking sound came from the ancient ancestor's body. It was like the rumbling of heavenly thunder. With the combined power of the two great ancient ancestors, countless divine lights of the great path intertwined on the wound of the ancient ancestor who had been wounded by the demon. Streaks of black power of the great path were forced out and dissipated in the void. Kill. The other ancient ancestors were visibly moved. The other ancient ancestors attacked. Powerful peak extreme path attacks drowned out the pair of demonic eyes. The 5 ancient ancestors attacked, causing the void to explode. A terrifying destructive aura spread out. Countless beings were terrified to the extreme. At this time, Di Jotien was displeased. All of you, scram. Di Jotien roared. Endless divine power erupted. The 5 ancient ancestors felt a great impact at the same time. Their expressions changed. Was Di Jotien crazy? His mine. Di Jotien glanced at the 5 ancient ancestors. You, one of the ancient ancestors, a white-robed old man, was both shocked and angry. Di Jotien was peerless and a battle maniac. In the past, they really wouldn't have been afraid of him. But not now. Di Jotien was now Ji Yufei's nominal disciple. If they touched Di Jotien, the consequences would be dire. Di Jotien was very powerful. The 5 ancient ancestors could only retreat unwillingly. The combined attack of the 5 ancient ancestors couldn't do anything to the demon. The blood-red demonic eyes were still there, still releasing a powerful demonic aura. How is this possible? The ancient ancestors watching the battle nearby couldn't help but be shocked. That demon, a black-robed youth, who was hiding to the side and watching the show, shrunk his neck. The strength of this demon was beyond his expectations. Hehe, be careful not to be targeted by that demon. A purple-robed man stood beside the black-robed young man. Sigh. There's a battle in the primal chaos immortal mansion. I didn't think there would be a battle outside as well. How unlucky. The black-robed young man sighed. Let's go meet those fellows from the eternal world. As the purple-robed man spoke, he crushed the talismans in his hand. In the next moment, he disappeared into the void. Ji Changkong, seeing the purple-robed man leave, the black-robed young man quickly crushed the talisman in his hand and disappeared into the void as well. At this time, in the primal chaos immortal mansion, the quasi-supremes from the eternal world appeared. The quasi-supremes from the eternal world clashed with the experts from the 4 worlds the moment they appeared. Soon, people from the 4 worlds fell. They didn't even have time to use their major teleportation talismans before they were instantly killed by the monstrous existences from the eternal world. How can these fellows be so strong? The experts from the 4 worlds were dumbfounded. The monstrous existences from the eternal world were simply too powerful. In the beginning, almost no one was a match for them. The cultivation bases of those from the eternal world were also at the quasi-supreme stage. There would not be any extreme Tao existences coming. That was because Ji Yufei and the supreme existence from the eternal world had already reached an agreement. Moreover, Ji Yufei had also set up a great defensive array to suppress all extreme Tao Supremes. Only quasi-supreme existences were unaffected. Once an extreme-grade sovereign appeared in the primal chaos immortal mansion world, the array formation would be activated and kill the intruding extreme-grade sovereign. Ji Yufei would not show mercy. Anyone who dared to break the rules he had set down would be his enemy and would have to die. It was the same even for those from the eternal world. Those who dared to challenge him must be prepared to die. Ji Yufei was not someone who could be easily bullied. So what if they were from the eternal world? It was not as if he had never killed an eternal before. Back then, he had forced the primogenitor, the first demon, to the point of risking his life to enter the cycle of reincarnation. Chapter 4568. Ji Yufei's Star Sword of the Nine Heavens was an eternal Tao artifact. He had relied on this sword to fight the peerless existence from eternal world to a standstill. The supreme existence from the eternal world was actually the founder of the eternal godly dynasty. He had come with a large force, but found that his opponent was very strong, suspected to be the reincarnation of an eternal one. This kind of existence was so terrifying that no one was willing to provoke a reincarnated eternal one. It should be noted that there were strong and weak eternal ones. Eternal ones like the founder of the eternal godly dynasty were only at the beginner level of the eternal realm. Eternal ones who could reincarnate were the strongest eternal ones in the eternal world, possessing a terrifying cultivation base and combat power at the peak of the eternal realm. They could step into the cycle of reincarnation, and their hands could touch the most mysterious things in the eternal world. However, existences like the founder of the eternal godly dynasty could not touch the most secretive things in the eternal world. When the founder of the eternal godly dynasty suspected that Ji Yufei was the reincarnation of an eternal almighty, he immediately lost his composure and chose to negotiate with Ji Yufei. In the end, the two reached a consensus. Then, the founder of the eternal godly dynasty led his army back to the eternal world. Soon, the eternal godly dynasty and the countless quasi-supremes attached to it entered the immortal mansion world through the portal. Although the divine son of the eternal godly dynasty had fallen in the immortal mansion world, killed by Ji Yuling, the price of making an enemy of Ji Yufei was too great. The eternal godly dynasty did not want to fight to the death with Ji Yufei. Haha, come on, it's good that all of you are here. Ji Yufei stood in the sky, looking down at the immortal mansion world. At this time, the quasi-supremes from the four worlds and the quasi-supremes from the eternal world clashed violently. Battles broke out everywhere in the chaos world. By this time, Ji Yufei had already asked Tongyu to set up the super great formation that could devour the power of others. Of course, Tongyu's great formation could directly devour the essence, energy and soul of experts, but Ji Yufei had made some modifications to it. He had turned this great array into an origin-devouring array, a super great array that would gradually devour the vitality of a cultivator without them realizing it. He was gathering the power of countless experts. That was especially true for the quasi-supremes from Eternal World. The worldly laws of Eternal World were far stronger compared to the four great worlds. Due to that, even if the cultivators from Eternal World were to be on the same level as the cultivators from the four great worlds, they would still be strong enough to sweep away those on the same level from the four great worlds. Master, should we take action? Tong Yu, who was standing behind Ji Yufei, asked carefully. Ji Yufei said nothing. At this time, in the primal chaos immortal mansion world, the quasi-sovereigns from the four great worlds were on the verge of being defeated. The entire primal chaos immortal mansion world was covered in a rain of blood. They're so strong, before a heaven realm quasi-supreme expert could finish his sentence, he was cut into two halves by a green-robed young man. Naturally, he couldn't finish his sentence. Can't even take a single blow. After saying that, the green-robed young man charged in another direction. It was a sacred mountain. More than 10 experts were engaged in a fierce battle on this sacred mountain, which wasn't very big. At the peak of the sacred mountain, there was a small scarlet tree. On the small tree, there were fruits shining with golden light. It's actually the metal origin fruit. When the green-robed young man saw the small tree on the mountain peak, his eyes immediately lit up. Without even thinking about it, he charged forward. Humph! At this moment, a cold laugh rang out. A figure charged over from the side, directly throwing a punch at the green-robed young man. The fist power was like a landslide. The attacker was an expert. Kill. The green-robed young man's entire body emitted incomparably sharp sword energy. The place where he stood was nearly pierced by the exploding sword energy. What? The sneak attacker was shocked. However, his fist still smashed towards the green-robed young man. Countless sword energy was dispersed by his fist. At the same time, the green-robed young man's body turned into a sword light. Like a true peerless sword light, he directly pounced towards the attacker. Boom! The two forces collided with each other in an instant, and the resulting shockwaves shook the surrounding void. The metal origin fruit is mine. The green-robed young man forced back the attacker. Then, with a flash, he directly appeared in front of the small tree. He was about to put the entire tree into his inner world. At this moment, a figure silently appeared behind the green-robed young man. Then, a brick viciously smashed the green-robed young man's head. The green-robed young man groaned and directly fell to the ground. He had actually been knocked unconscious by a brick. Hee. A figure appeared in front of the green-robed young man and directly looted him. Even his inner world was no exception. I say, this guy is too despicable. Ji Changkong saw this scene and frowned. The black-robed young man was He Tian. Despicable? It's obvious that this guy's skills are inferior. He was defeated by me, He Tian said disapprovingly. After saying that, his body flashed and instantly disappeared into the void, not leaving a trace behind. The god of deceit had returned. This time, the four great realms became lively. Ji Changkong shook his head helplessly. Just as he was about to follow, a figure suddenly blocked his path. A shocking killing intent erupted from this person's body. Hey! When Ji Changkong saw this person, he could not help but be shocked. Even with his cultivation, he actually did not sense that someone was following him. This was not a good thing for him. This person's cultivation was at least not below Ji Changkong's. Who are you? Ji Changkong was very calm. He did not have many friends in the heaven realm. Naturally, he did not have any enemies. However, it was very obvious that this old man definitely wanted to kill him. Ji Yuanshan. The skinny old man said coldly. What? When Ji Changkong heard this, he was immediately shocked. You are Ji Yuanshan? Ji Changkong's voice trembled slightly. Ji Yuanshan was the peerless divine son of the previous generation. He had once defeated the entire younger generation of the eternal divine dynasty. However, for some unknown reason, such a peerless person had suddenly disappeared. No one knew where Ji Yuanshan had gone. No one knew the reason why he had disappeared without a trace. However, a person who used to be extremely stunning had actually appeared here. He was actually an old man who looked so ordinary that he couldn't be any more ordinary. You want to kill me? Ji Changkong stared at the skinny old man opposite him. Yes. The skinny old man's tone was very firm. Why? Chapter 4569. Ji Yuanshan was once a genius of the Creep Myrtle Star's Ji clan. Back then, for some unknown reason, Ji Yuanshan, who was at the peak of his power, suddenly disappeared. The attitude of the clan's ancestors towards this matter was also thought-provoking. In the end, this matter was left unsettled and no one talked about it anymore. Even Ji Changkong did not know what had happened back then. This was because no one had mentioned it to him. Now, Ji Yuanshan, who had mysteriously disappeared, actually appeared in front of him. This caused Ji Changkong to be indescribably shocked. What made him even more shocked was that Ji Yuanshan was actually here to kill him. Why do you want to kill me? Ji Changkong's expression was incomparably grave. One must know that the Creep Myrtle Star's Ji clan forbade members from killing each other. Of course, in the current era, this rule only existed in name in the Creep Myrtle Star's Ji clan. No one cared about this rule. In the battle between Ji Changkong and Emperor Ji, there were casualties on both sides. The old ancestors of the Ji clan turned a blind eye to these things and didn't care at all. I'm just returning a favor. Ji Yuanshan looked coldly at Ji Changkong. Favor? Ji Changkong was enraged. Did it feel like his life was not even worth a favor from the other party? Alright, I'll send you on your way. Ji Yuanshan roared furiously and directly attacked Ji Changkong. His speed was extremely fast. Swish. In the next moment, Ji Changkong's figure disappeared in the void. His speed was also unbelievably fast. Ji Yuanshan only managed to hit an afterimage of Ji Changkong. Hey! Ji Yuanshan was shocked. This little guy's cultivation and battle prowess did not seem to be below his. Rumble. Ji Yuanshan only heard a rumbling sound coming from above him. He suddenly raised his head and saw a huge hand rapidly enlarging in his eyes. Boom. Ji Yuanshan basically had no time to react. In an instant, he was smashed into the ground by Ji Changkong's palm. A huge palm print appeared on the ground. Crack after crack spread out from the palm print. Roar. A muffled roar came from the ground. In the next moment, boom, the palm print on the ground suddenly exploded, and a figure rushed out from the ground. A violent aura erupted from this person. His hair was disheveled and blood seeped out from the corner of his mouth. He was in an extremely sorry state. Little fellow, Ji Yuanshan viciously stared at Ji Changkong. His eyes gradually turned blood red. It was as if he was about to fall into madness. Violent ape heavenly art? When Ji Changkong saw the image of a huge ape appear on Ji Yuanshan's body, he couldn't help but be shocked. The violent ape heavenly skill was a forbidden skill of the Ji clan. When practicing this skill, the cultivator would be possessed by the devil if he was not careful. The violent ape heavenly skill had a huge flaw. Since ancient times, within the Ji clan, almost no one was willing to cultivate this skill. However, who would have thought that Ji Yuanshan would actually take a different path and choose the violent ape heavenly skill? However, what was even more unbelievable was that Ji Yuanshan had actually trained this mysterious technique to the pinnacle. Roar. Ji Yuanshan faced the sky and roared. Then, he once again attacked Ji Changkong. The two quasi-supreme beings started fighting. Just as Ji Changkong and Ji Yuanshan were fighting, He Tian started his looting operation. He directly attacked with a stick and robbed over 10 divine sons from the 4 great realms. He didn't even let off the saintess. That damned bastard plotted against me. In a valley, an old man wearing only a pair of shorts was so angry that he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. He had just snatched a stalk of divine medicine king from someone else, but before he could even put it away, he felt a pain in his head and his vision went black. He had been hit by a stick. After waking up, the old man realized that everything on him, including all the cultivation resources that he had obtained with great difficulty, even his clothes, had been stripped. Wow. He even robbed an old man. That guy is too arrogant. Hee. I heard that the fairies of the inviting moon immortal palace were also robbed. What? Bastard. He even robbed fairies. Is he still human? Someone jumped out and shouted. What are you shouting for? I did rob them. So what? He Tian quickly responded. Of course, he didn't dare to openly express his stance. He only left a few lines of words on a large stone. Do you still have the clothes of the fairies that were robbed by that bastard? Someone was concerned about this. That despicable thief even stripped an old man's clothes. How could the clothes of the inviting moon immortal palace's fairies still be there? Very soon, someone who claimed to be an honored guest of the inviting moon immortal palace jumped out to speak. The clothes of the fairies weren't stripped, but there was a huge bump on her forehead. Damn, brother, you really don't know how to have tender feelings for the fairer sex. Inhumane. I seriously suspect that this sneak attack guy is no good. Someone directly looked down on He Tian. He was really a godly person to be able to do something like this. Since he had knocked them unconscious, he didn't do anything other than rob them. This was really strange. It could only be said that he was a great thief with a bottom line. The inviting moon immortal palace was one of the top forces in the primordial realm. This force was very strong and ranked in the top 10 of the primordial realm. The fairies of the inviting moon immortal palace were the saintesses of the inviting moon immortal palace. Her appearance was naturally peerless. How could this guy do something like this? What a deranged guy. Everyone has the right to punish him. Someone yelled. Then, countless people responded. He Tian was really too ruthless this time. He robbed along the way, and many big shots suffered. All their belongings were robbed clean. It was incomparably miserable. However, because of this, Erebus incurred the wrath of the masses. Although He Tian was powerful, a large group of divine sons and saintesses were chasing him all over the world. He couldn't handle it, so he fled for his life. He Tian fled into the depths of the primordial chaos immortal mansion world. There were lush trees here, but no sounds of beasts could be heard in the mountains. It was too quiet. Is there a big guy entrenched here? He Tian carefully walked inside. Soon, he saw a cave. Inside the cave, there was a rainbow-colored brilliance. However, this brilliance quickly disappeared. What is this? He Tian was very curious, so he quietly walked up. Roar. A terrifying roar suddenly came from the cave, and the entire cave immediately shook. A terrifying figure appeared in the cave. Oh no! He Tian immediately turned around and fled. However, the existence in the cave directly chased after him. F***ck. He Tian directly ran, passing through the forest. Suddenly, a person appeared in front of him. Brother, it's great to see you. I'll give you a great opportunity. Chapter 4570. The great fortune in the immortal mansion world was not so easy to obtain. Even someone as strong as He Tian would have to run away if he encountered a ruthless character in this world. Today, He Tian was really unlucky. He had found a quasi-immortal divine medicine, but there was a terrifying creature of the dead guarding it. It was a demonic ape with only a skeleton left. In the skull of this demonic ape, there was a soul fire that was extremely bright. This was not the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing was that He Tian found that the cultivation of this bone ape was higher than his, and its combat power was comparable to that of a supreme. In front of this bone ape, it was difficult for He Tian to protect himself, let alone take the quasi-immortal divine medicine. The smartest choice was to turn around and run away. Brother, it's really great to see you. He Tian fled thousands of miles away. When he rushed out of a primitive forest, he bumped into Old Tortoise. I just happened to give you a great fortune. There's something good behind me. He Tian directly hugged Old Tortoise. You're so kind. Give me a great fortune. Old Tortoise was stunned. Who was this He Tian? He was a guy who plucked feathers from geese. Now, he wanted to give him a great fortune. Was this possible? How can you say that? I've always been kind to you, brother. I still have something to do, so I'll leave first. See you later. As He Tian spoke, he directly rushed away and disappeared from Old Tortoise's sight in an instant. What the hell is this guy doing? Old Tortoise did not believe that He Tian would be so kind at all. Roar. Just as Old Tortoise was bewildered, a terrifying roar suddenly sounded from the forest in front of him. The whole area was shaking, and at the same time, a terrifying and monstrous aura of death swept over. He Tian, you bastard. Old Tortoise was shocked and directly opened his mouth to curse. At this time, he could feel a powerful divine thought lock onto him. Boom! With a loud bang, the forest opposite Old Tortoise exploded, and a skeletal beast the size of a hill rushed out of the forest. It was a berserk demon ape. A powerful aura of death spread out from the dead spirit's body. The surrounding flowers and trees were rapidly withering as their vitality was constantly being drained away. The power of death extinguished all life. Soon, all the flowers and trees within a radius of tens of thousands of miles withered. At this time, Old Tortoise had already cursed all 18 generations of He Tian's ancestors in his heart. This guy even dared to trick him. It was really outrageous. You even dare to scam me. I'm not done with you. Old Tortoise wanted to escape, but he couldn't because the raging devil ape was rapidly enlarging in his eyes. The devil ape actually pounced on him. Roar. Old Tortoise roared. The next moment, a tortoise shell emerged from his body and covered him. Boom. The devil ape directly pounced on the tortoise shell, causing it to shake violently. Countless Dao patterns appeared and intertwined on the tortoise shell, forming a terrifying protective power. Those were the Dao patterns formed when the black tortoise cultivated to the extreme grade. They were extremely ancient, but this tortoise shell was not an extreme-grade tortoise shell. Gu Fei had used a superformation to suppress the extreme-grade power. Although this superformation was not comparable to the heavenly punishment of the human realm and the heaven realm, it was still no small matter. Old Tortoise learned all this from Gu Fei. Naturally, he would not use the extreme-grade power. Even the countless powerful creatures from Eternal World were incapable of utilizing the power of the extreme Tao. Gu Fei had long since declared that anyone who dared utilize the power of the extreme Tao would be killed. At this time, people were fighting everywhere in this chaos immortal mansion world. The geniuses and monsters from the heaven realm, the human realm, the primordial realm, and the 10,000 realm were all fighting. Their enemies were those fellows from Eternal World. At this time, Old Tortoise could only brace himself and fight the devil ape. He had the protection of the black tortoise shell. Even if the devil ape was extremely powerful, it would not be able to break through his defense and truly hurt him. Oh, my God! Fortunately, that undying creature did not chase after me. In front of a pool hundreds of thousands of miles away from where Old Tortoise and the devil ape were fighting, He Tian heaved a sigh of relief. Only now did he dare to stop. That demonic ape was too powerful. Although he was a quasi-sovereign, he didn't want to fight to the death with that demonic ape. With his cultivation, even if he could defeat that demonic ape, he would have to pay a huge price. Fortunately, he met Old Tortoise at the crucial moment. Even hundreds of thousands of miles away, He Tian could still sense Old Tortoise's aura. At this time, the battle between Ji Changkong and Ji Yuanshan had reached its climax. Ji Changkong cultivated the 9 Deaths Heaven art. Ji Yuanshan also cultivated the famous heaven art of the Ji family, the violent ape art. However, the violent ape art could not compare to the 9 Deaths Heaven art. Boom! In the end, Ji Yuanshan was struck in the chest by Ji Changkong's 9 Deaths palm art. In the next moment, his entire body exploded, turning into a bloody mist. Even his primordial spirit was shattered. The genius of the Ji clan had actually fallen just like that. Ji Changkong really wanted to know who wanted to kill him. He really wanted to know who was behind Ji Yuanshan. However, as Ji Yuanshan was killed by his 9 Deaths palm art, all the mysteries could not be resolved. All of this was seen by Gu Fei. To dare stretch their hands into my territory. The mastermind is too arrogant. They simply do not put me in their eyes. High up in the sky, Gu Fei's expression was somewhat gloomy as he sat cross-legged in the clouds. Master, the mastermind actually dared to scheme against you. It seems that he is not simple. Tong Yu, who was standing to the side, muttered. Me. So what if he is not simple? Since he dared to scheme against me, he must be prepared to pay the price. Gu Fei said. Who cared who the mastermind was or what his background was? Could it be that this sneaky fellow was stronger than the primogenitor of the past, the first demon, or the current eternal godly dynasty's primogenitor? Those two were genuine eternal sovereigns, not extreme-grade supremes. Eternal sovereigns could kill extreme-grade supremes with one hand. Of course, Gu Fei was not yet an eternal one. However, he could rely on an eternal Tao artifact to challenge a true eternal sovereign. Even the eternal godly dynasty's primogenitor of the eternal godly dynasty was unwilling to provoke Gu Fei. Even if Jiu Ling killed the eternal godly dynasty's primogenitor, the eternal godly dynasty had no intention of pursuing the matter. That was because the primogenitor of the eternal godly dynasty believed that Gu Fei was the reincarnation of an eternal expert. If that was true, there would likely be very few in the entire eternal godly world who would dare provoke Gu Fei. After all, those who dared to stretch their hands into reincarnation were the truly monstrous existences in the eternal world. Chapter 4571. In the human realm, the Ji clan of the Myrtle Star was the strongest cultivation clan in the entire planet, and the Ji clan was the master of the planet. There were 5 ancestral planets in the human world. Almost all the living beings in the human world were born from these 5 ancestral planets. Among the 5 ancestral stars, only the Ziwei ancestral star was completely controlled by a cultivation clan, and on the Ziwei ancestral star, the Ji clan ruled the world. However, There had never been a single person, or even a single family, who could unite the entire ancestral star. The Zhuiji clan had a few supreme cultivation techniques, and the 9 Deaths Heaven art was one of them. Ji Changkong was the first person to successfully cultivate the 9 Deaths Heaven art in the countless years of the Zhuiji clan. It was because of the 9 Deaths Heaven art that he was able to compete with the Violet Emperor. At this moment, as Ji Yuanshan was blasted to smithereens by Ji Changkong's 9 death seals, it was impossible to find out who was behind Ji Yuanshan. However, in the entire human world and the heavenly realm, Ji Yufei had many enemies. This Ji Yuanshan would definitely not run over to Ji Yufei's place to kill Ji Changkong. After Ji Changkong killed Ji Yuanshan, although he was somewhat displeased, he quickly continued forward. His target was a land of fortune in the depths of the Primal Chaos Immortal Mansion world. At this time, outside the Primal Chaos Immortal Mansion world, a piece of news spread. All the cultivators of the 4 worlds were shocked to the extreme. Di Jiutian fought against the 5 ancient ancestors from Eternal World, killing 2 and defeating 3. It was a shocking feat since ancient times. No living creature had managed to accomplish such a feat. However, Di Jiutian had done it today. Outside the world of the Primal Chaos Immortal Estate, a black figure wielding a war spear stood quietly outside the entrance to the world of the Immortal Estate. His entire body was stained with blood, and his clothes were tattered. He looked like a beggar, but no one dared to look down on him, because he was Di Jiutian. After experiencing this life and death battle, Di Jiutian felt that he had forced out all of his potential. As he took that step forward, his aura underwent a shocking transformation, and an aura of eternity began to emanate from him. In order to take this step, Di Jiutian had sacrificed many things. He had even become the disciple of Ji Yufei. Today, he finally succeeded. Di Jiutian stood outside the entrance to the world of the Immortal Estate. Although he looked very badly injured, and there were some places on his body where even his bones could be seen, he didn't seem to have been injured at all. However, no one dared to approach him. With him guarding this place, no one would dare to rashly barge into the Primal Chaos Immortal Mansion world. At this time, the Zhu clan's little Empyrean, Zhu Qi, thought that the entire Primal Chaos Immortal Mansion world was about to undergo a huge change. However, he didn't see Ji Yufei go crazy for a long time. Could it be that Ji Yuling was really not dead? Ji Yuling had fought against Eternal World's eternal godly dynasties Wu family's divine son, Wu Fan, and the Chen family's Chen Ju. Ji Yuling had killed off Wu Fan and forced Chen Ju to blow himself up in despair. The terrifying destructive force created by Chen Ju's self-detonation was too shocking, and it directly blasted Zhu Qi and Ziyun flying. Ji Yuling was at the center of Chen Ju's self-destruction, so how could she survive? However, should Ji Yuling truly die, the consequences would be dire. It would surely pierce the heavens. Even if it was someone from Eternal World, Ji Yufei would not let them go. He would kill until rivers of blood flowed. However, things didn't seem to be developing as Zhu Qi had expected. There was only one reason why Ji Yufei didn't go crazy: Ji Yuling was still alive. How can I waste such pure essence qi? At the center of Chen Ju's self-destruction, a figure was sitting cross-legged in a ball of divine light. The ball of divine light was emitting a devouring power that was madly devouring the surrounding energy. When Zhu Qi and Ziyun saw this, their eyes almost fell to the ground. They were dumbfounded. No one could have imagined that not only was Ji Yuling not dead, but she was also leisurely devouring the powerful energy created by Chen Ju's self-destruction. The trial continued. In a place of fortune, the golden spirit ape Yuan Hong was fighting with someone. His golden fists caused his opponent to continuously cough up blood, and in the end, he had no choice but to retreat. The golden spirit ape Yuan Hong didn't kill his opponent. After he chased his opponent away, he directly smashed a huge mountain with a punch. A beam of divine light directly rushed out from the mountain and soared into the sky, trying to escape. Yuan Hong sneered and directly turned into a beam of golden light. He used a mystique and grabbed the beam of divine light. It was a small golden sword. The small golden sword emitted a dazzling golden light, and countless Tao patterns appeared on its surface. An extremely sharp sword chi wave erupted from the small sword. Not bad. Yuan Hong put away the flying sword in his hand. It was a quasi-supreme Dao weapon. A quasi-supreme Dao weapon was already the strongest Dao weapon below the extreme Dao. However, Old Tortoise was extremely unlucky. After being tricked by He Tian, he had no choice but to fight to the death with the demon ape. However, even if he fought to the death, it was hard to determine who would win. Boom. Bam. Muffled sounds that sounded like the nine heavens' divine thunder kept ringing. Old Tortoise wanted to end the battle quickly, so he directly used his strongest combat strength to kill the demon ape as soon as possible. However, the demon ape was not to be trifled with. It spat out demonic fire, causing the void to distort from the heat. If Old Tortoise did not have the protection of the black tortoise shell, he would have long been burned to ashes. Even so, he still felt as though all the blood in his body had been ignited, and his blood was boiling. At that moment, He Tian was being chased by a group of geniuses from Eternal World. He was on the verge of going berserk. This fellow had specifically gone to plunder the divine sons and saintesses from Eternal World, believing themselves to be exalted existences. Due to that, a great hunt ensued. However, looting these geniuses from Eternal World gave him a lot of cultivation resources. Let's see where you can run to now. Just as He Tian fled to a mountain ridge, a figure suddenly descended from the sky and blocked his way. Kill. When that person saw He Tian, his eyes turned red and he immediately attacked He Tian. Damn it. Didn't I just rob your fiancé? Damn it, do you want to go all out? As He Tian spoke, he moved 3,000 zhong to the side and evaded the attack that descended from the sky. Boom. As the man's fist fell, the entire mountain range below directly collapsed and was forcibly erased by that man. Despicable fellow, do you know who my master is? You dare rob my future young mistress? Another figure appeared in the sky. It was a cyan-robed servant. However, the power fluctuations coming from the cyan-robed servant were incomparably powerful. Surprisingly, he was also a quasi-supreme. TSK, who the hell is your master? Erebus flashed his middle finger at the person who had attacked him. You're courting death. I'm going to tear you to pieces and suppress your soul in the 9 underworlds. I'll use the extreme yin fire to refine your soul for 10,000 years. I'll make you beg for death. Chapter 4572. This guy is really something. I can't believe he dared to rob the fiancé of the eldest prince of the eternal divine dynasty. Is he tired of living? He Tian had been causing quite a ruckus these past few days. He had been robbing people from behind and plotting against them. Everyone he targeted had fallen into his trap. I heard that this brother even stripped the clothes off those divine sons. Someone exclaimed. He even robbed them of their clothes. How inhumane. Someone shook his head. TCH, what do you know? Everyone from the eternal imperial family is wearing divine silkworm robes or immortal gold armor. Any one of them is a treasure. Someone said angrily. A creature from the mysterious eternal world. Would it lack good items on it? I see. Only then did everyone come to a sudden realization. Clothes were treasures, so why not snatch them? If they didn't rob them, they would be letting these treasures down. However, Erebus was so lawless that he even dared to snatch the fiancé of the eldest prince of the eternal divine dynasty. That was simply outrageous. The people of the eternal divine dynasty were only afraid of Ji Yufei, not others. They didn't dare act presumptuously in front of Ji Yufei. After all, Ji Yufei was an important figure who could challenge their patriarch. However, apart from Ji Yufei, who else in the Chaos Immortal Mansion world could be a match for them? After coming to the Chaos Immortal Mansion world, the people of the eternal divine dynasty were arrogant and despotic. They looked down on everyone except Ji Yufei. In particular, the people of the eternal imperial family killed people and robbed them of their treasures at the slightest disagreement. They treated the Chaos Immortal Mansion world as their hunting ground. The behavior of the eternal imperial family naturally angered the people of the 4 major worlds. Wu Chen, the prince of the Wuji dynasty from the human world, had been punched to death by the cyan-robed servant of the eternal divine dynasty because he hadn't made way for the eldest prince. Erebus had actually robbed the Eternal Crown Prince's fiancée. How could this be? The fiancée of the Eternal Imperial Prince, Heng Chao, also had a powerful background. She was the Holy Maiden of the Ling Tian Holy Land, one of the three major factions of the Immortal Continent. The Ling Tian Sacred Ground had a transcendent status in the Celestial Continent. The disciples of the Ling Tian Sacred Ground were all women. Because there were forces from other continents threatening the Celestial Continent, the Eternal Divine Dynasty and the Ling Tian Sacred Ground planned to form an alliance through marriage. The battles within Eternal World grew even more intense. Kill him. Heng Chao directly gave the order. This ant from a low-level world was not worthy of him personally taking action. Yes, Master. The servant in green who was standing behind Heng Chao walked out. Kid, how do you want to die? The green-robed servant grinned as he stared at Gu Fei. TSK, you think you can kill me? He Tian said disdainfully. You dare look down on me? The cyan-robed servant was enraged. At the next moment, an extremely powerful wave of energy burst forth from his body. He had been an inconspicuous cyan-robed servant just a moment ago, but now, his aura was much stronger than that of an ordinary god's son or saintess. Get lost, let your master come here. He Tian waved his hand impatiently. Go to hell. The cyan-robed servant retracted his right hand. At the next moment, his palm shot forward like a venomous snake, instantly reaching the front of He Tian. Swoosh. He Tian's figure suddenly disappeared into the void. The cyan-robed servant was taken aback. This guy's speed was too fast. He looked up abruptly and saw a huge foot rapidly enlarging in front of his eyes. Bam! Without any suspense, the cyan-robed servant's head was stepped on by He Tian, forcing him into the ground, leaving only his head exposed. One must look at the master before beating a dog. The cyan-robed servant was stomped into the ground by He Tian the moment he made a move. As his master, Heng Chao's face turned gloomy. This guy is indeed not simple. No wonder he dared to rob Heng Chao's fiancée. Those who came from the Eternal World and knew about Heng Chao's background were all taken aback. They had thought that He Tian had only relied on sneak attacks to rob so many divine sons and saintesses of the Eternal World. Now, it seemed that this guy did have some skills. Roar. The cyan-robed servant went crazy. In an instant, the power of a quasi-supreme erupted from his body like 100,000 volcanoes erupting at the same time. The extremely violent power directly burst the ground, causing the entire ground to explode and dust to soar into the sky. One after another, divine light shot out from the cyan-robed servant's body. Each of the divine light was like a venomous snake, ruthlessly strangling He Tian. At the same time, the cyan-robed servant carried He Tian and flew up into the sky. Myriad returned to origin, 1 foot to suppress the universe, suppress. He Tian exerted force with his right foot, which was stepping on the cyan-robed servant's head, and a terrifying divine power immediately erupted from his foot. The next moment, the cyan-robed servant was trampled down from the sky by He Tian, and the countless divine lights that were aimed at He Tian were all dispersed by him. Boom! This time, there was a loud noise, and a bottomless pit was created by He Tian's foot. The cyan-robed servant was crushed under his foot. Can't even withstand a single blow. He Tian stood in the void with his hands behind his back, looking indifferently at Heng Chao, the eldest prince of the Eternal Divine Dynasty. The eldest prince of the Eternal Divine Dynasty was so angry that his lungs almost exploded. He rose from his throne, and one after another, great stars appeared in the void around him. A torrential force of stars erupted from his body, causing the surrounding void to tremble. The people who were watching the battle from the sidelines were also extremely shocked. No one could have imagined that this fellow named He Tian could trample Heng Chao's servant to death with 1 foot. That servant was no ordinary person, and his cultivation had reached the quasi-supreme level. Everyone looked at He Tian in a different light. Some of the people who had been robbed by him wanted to jump out and settle the score with him, but now, they were stunned. You just killed one of my servants. What's the big deal? Heng Chao's voice was extremely cold. Hihi, is that so? What if I trampled you to death? He Tian stared at Heng Chao with a crazed look in his eyes, like a starving beast that had suddenly encountered its prey. Just then, a white figure appeared nearby. "Eldest niece, you're here too?" Hei Tian didn't care about the furious Heng Chao at all. He turned around and shouted at the white-robed woman. "Uncle Hei Tian, how have you been?" The white-robed woman was Jiu Ling He. "I'm fine. I'm not dead yet." Hei Tian grinned. "Hei Tian, you bastard." Just then, an angry roar came from the distance, and the terrifying sound waves shook the void. An unimaginably powerful wave of energy swept over, and everyone couldn't help but turn pale. "Oh my God." As soon as Hei Tian heard that roar, he immediately turned and fled. "Where do you think you're going?" Chapter 4573. Heng Chao was the crown prince of the Eternal Divine Dynasty, one of the 13 eastern continents of the Eternal World. His cultivation was no weaker than that of the former Eternal Son of God. However, the Eternal Son of God was so talented that the experts of the older generation of the imperial family thought highly of him. Hence, he was conferred the title of Son of God and heir to the Eternal Emperor. As the crown prince of the Eternal Divine Dynasty, he was naturally dissatisfied. However, so what if he was dissatisfied? Who would dare question the Eternal Emperor's decision? Now that the Eternal Son of God had fallen in this world, Heng Chao, the crown prince of the Eternal Divine Dynasty, saw hope. As long as he won this trial and obtained the heaven-defying fortune here, the position of the Eternal Son of God would be in his bag. However, no one expected that Heng Chao's fiancée would be robbed. This made him lose face, so he naturally wanted to tear the person who robbed his fiancée to pieces. Therefore, Hei Tian was targeted by the crown prince of the Eternal Divine Dynasty and chased after him all the way. Hei Tian really didn't care about this so-called crown prince of the Eternal Divine Dynasty. However, when Old Tortoise came, he fled at once. He had tricked Old Tortoise. If he was caught by Old Tortoise, he would be in big trouble. Swoosh! Hei Tian turned into a beam of light and shot into the sky, instantly disappearing into the horizon. Heng Chao was dumbfounded when he saw this. Rainbow flight technique. Old Tortoise took a step forward and arrived nearby. He couldn't help but exclaim when he saw Hei Tian turn into a beam of light and instantly flee. This guy, Old Tortoise was furious, but he could only watch as this guy fled. Heng Chao, the crown prince of the Eternal Divine Dynasty, disappeared into the void in an instant. He actually displayed a speed technique and chased after Zhu Donghuang. Who is this guy? Old Tortoise was stunned, but he soon realized that the guy who could catch up with Hei Tian in speed was the crown prince of the Eternal Divine Dynasty of the Eternal World. No wonder. Old Tortoise had to admit that this fellow from Eternal World did possess some ability. This scene was seen by Jiu Fei up in the sky, and he couldn't help but shake his head with a bitter smile. This Hei Tian really deserved to be called the god of swindlers. Wherever he went, he would swindle. The Old Tortoise was truly enraged. He was cheated miserably. That devil ape was incomparably powerful. Even if he managed to kill it, he had to pay a hefty price. At that moment, outside the Chaos Immortal Mansion world, Di Jotian's battle with the demon from Eternal World had reached its final stage. His whole body was bathed in blood and his body was pierced through. Bloody holes appeared all over his body. However, his battle intent was still like a rainbow, killing intent shocking the 9 heavens. One man with one spear, the power he displayed made countless ancient ancestors watching from the side indescribably shocked. By then, even the demon from Eternal World had sensed something amiss. Kill. The blood-colored demonic eyes emitted a frightening demonic light as they slashed towards Di Jotian. Everywhere the blood-colored demonic light went, the void would be cleaved apart. Demonic runes appeared and intertwined on the surface of the blood-colored demonic light. It was a shocking display of power. This demonic Tao power surpassed the demonic Tao power of the 4 great worlds. The heavenly Tao of Eternal World was stronger and more complete compared to the heavenly Tao of any other world. Generally speaking, the powerful creatures that grew up in Eternal World were stronger than creatures of the same level from other worlds. There was no doubt about that. This was the advantage of the creatures from Eternal World. However, that did not mean that the creatures from Eternal World were stronger than those from other worlds. Naturally, Such monstrous geniuses from other worlds were very rare. Since ancient times, there had only been one Jiyu Fei who had done so. Bring it on. Di Jyotian furiously channeled his mystic art. Next, his body turned blurry and 9 Di Jushans appeared in the void. What kind of magic is this? The ancient ancestors watching from the side were shocked. They could sense that each of the 9 Di Jushans was exuding a peerless divine might. Each of the 9 Di Jushans had the full battle power of Di Jyotian's true body. How is this possible? This magic is heaven-defying. No one could remain calm when they saw this. Every one of the 9 Tao bodies that Di Jyotian had conjured was as strong as Di Jyotian's true body. This was the equivalent of 9 real Di Jushans attacking at the same time. This kind of battle power was absolutely unparalleled in the world. No one under the eternal realm could match this kind of battle power. Boom! With just a single strike, the void exploded. A part of the void turned into chaos, destroying everything in its path. The blood-colored demonic light and the blood-colored demonic eyes all exploded under Di Jyotian's attack. Even the people watching the battle were affected. The exploding demonic light pierced through several ancient ancestors. Roar! The ancient ancestors howled miserably and retreated. Their bodies were rapidly thinning. The demonic light that had entered their bodies was actually devouring their flesh. One of the ancient ancestors even had his essence devoured by the demonic light that had invaded his body. He was turned into a dried corpse. Even his primordial spirit could not escape. The ancient ancestors who had been hit were scared out of their wits. They desperately used their mystic arts to expel the terrifying demonic power from their bodies. The demonic power could destroy all life. What terrified these ancient ancestors was that their Tao could not suppress the demonic power in their bodies. If they could not suppress the demonic power in their bodies, it meant that they would follow in the footsteps of the previous person. The demonic power would completely devour their blood and eventually destroy their souls. At the ancient ancestor level, it was a competition of Tao and Grand Tao. Whoever's Tao was stronger could decide the life and death of others. This was how cruel the cultivation world was. No matter where one went, the strong would be respected. This was an unchanging law. The weak could only be controlled by the strong. Roar! A terrifying roar resounded. A demonic figure appeared in the distance. The vague demonic figure exuded a terrifying pressure that caused the world to tremble. Is his true body about to descend? The 9 Di Jushans spoke at the same time. Terrifying sound waves spread out and scattered the primal chaos mist for 100,000 kilometers. Even ancient ancestor-level existences suffered a tremendous impact. The weaker ancient ancestors even had blood seeping out of their ears and hurriedly retreated into the distance. Jiyu Fei, who was guarding the primal chaos immortal mansion, suddenly opened his eyes and looked at the entrance of the primal chaos immortal mansion. More freaks of the eternal realm are coming? Jiyu Fei frowned. Were there really many freaks of the eternal realm in the eternal world? Chapter 4574. Outside the world of the chaotic immortal mansion, Di Jyotian finally exploded. His 9 Tao clones attacked at the same time and destroyed the crimson demonic eye. At this moment, Di Jyotian was extremely domineering. Was this Di Jyotian's true strength? The experts from both the heavenly realm and the human realm were shocked. Di Jyotian had long been famous. He had battled against the 9 heavens and had never been defeated. That was, until he met Jiyu Fei. Di Jyotian had battled for his entire life. At this moment, his 9 Tao clones had clearly changed. A faintly discernible eternal aura circled around them. This was the first sign that Di Jyotian had taken his first step into the eternal realm. If there were no accidents, Di Jyotian's cultivation would break through the shackles of the extreme Tao and step into the half-step eternal realm. However, just as Di Jyotian destroyed the crimson demonic eye, a demonic shadow appeared in this part of the world. The demonic aura exuded from the blurry demonic shadow dispersed all the primordial mist within hundreds of thousands of miles. One after another, ancient demonic patterns appeared and intertwined on this blurry demonic figure's body. The appearance of the demonic shadow shook the surroundings. The nearby ancient ancestors didn't dare to approach. Even Di Jotian's 9 Dao clones had a grave expression on their faces. "Little fellow, you've successfully angered me. A wave of divine will spread from the blurry demonic shadow." The crowd couldn't help but be moved when they heard him call Di Jotian little fellow. "Cut the crap. If you want to fight, let's fight." Di Jotian raised the battle spear in his hand and said coldly. The movements of the 9 incarnations of the Great Path were all the same. The might emanating from the 9 incarnations of the Great Path shook the void, and the surrounding void constantly trembled from the impact. "Since you want to die, I have no reason not to fulfill your wish. The demonic shadow's divine will spread," and a voice rang in everyone's hearts. "Mph, I'm afraid you don't have the ability." Di Jotian shook the battle spear in his hand. The next moment, the 9 figures shot into the sky at the same time and attacked the demonic shadow. The terrifying aura that erupted from them shook the heavens and the earth. This Di Jotian, the ancient ancestors couldn't help but be moved when they saw this. Boom! A great battle broke out and powerful energy ripples spread out. Suddenly, the sky collapsed and the earth cracked. Countless black spatial cracks appeared in the void. This battle was even more tragic than the previous one. While Di Jotian was fighting the demon from Eternal World, the crown prince of the Eternal Godly Dynasty caught up to He Tian and intercepted him in the Chaos Immortal Mansion. "Ayo, I didn't expect you to have some ability. You actually managed to catch up to me." He Tian was a little surprised. Heng Chao, the eldest prince of the Eternal Divine Dynasty, didn't say much. He immediately threw a punch at He Tian's face, and the violent fist force shook the void. This was the Eternal Divine Fist, a battle path cultivation technique of the Eternal Divine Dynasty. When Heng Chao punched out, even the extremely stable void in the Chaos Immortal Mansion world was shaken. If this Supreme Divine Fist was used in the outside world, it would probably cause the entire void to explode. The Eternal Divine Fist was the supreme killing art of the Eternal Divine Dynasty, and only the imperial family of the dynasty could cultivate it. Ordinary members of the imperial family were not qualified to cultivate it. Swoosh! He Tian suddenly smiled, and in the next moment, he disappeared into the void. "What?" Heng Chao was taken aback. He couldn't retract his fist anymore. In the next moment, he looked up and saw a huge foot stomping down on his head. Heng Chao was furious. This guy didn't take him seriously at all. Boom! Endless power of the stars erupted from Heng Chao's body, and countless stars appeared in the void around him. It was as if a galaxy had appeared between heaven and earth. The exploding power of the stars directly pushed He Tian back. Power of the stars? He Tian frowned. He waved his hands, and beams of divine light rushed out of his hands. Each beam of divine light was like a peerless heavenly blade, and they directly cut through the void. Swoosh! A beam of divine light swept across Heng Chao, and a mark immediately appeared on his protective armor, as if it had been cut by a peerless Dao weapon. What? Heng Chao was taken aback. No one knew better than him how powerful the defense of the armor he was wearing was. Even the most powerful quasi-supreme Dao weapon would not be able to leave a mark on it. However, right now, this despicable fellow had actually managed to leave behind a mark on his armor. It was unimaginable. "You can actually block my flying immortal cleaving Dao technique?" He Tian was equally shocked. One should know that the technique he used was one of the opportunities he obtained from the flying immortal land on ancestral Myrtle Star. The divine light he conjured was the flying immortal light, which could kill a quasi-supreme. When cultivated to the extreme, it could even kill an extreme grade supreme. Of course, with He Tian's current cultivation, it was naturally impossible for him to kill an extreme grade supreme with the flying immortal cleaving Dao technique, but he could still kill a quasi-supreme. "You have a lot of treasures on you." He Tian's eyes lit up as he stared at the armor on Heng Chao's body. He had originally planned to rob these guys from the Eternal Divine Dynasty. The eldest prince of the Eternal Divine Dynasty definitely had a lot of treasures on him. This time, he had encountered a big fish. "Despicable and shameless ant, you want to rob this prince?" Heng Chao was furious. The thought of this guy robbing his fiancée made him go crazy, and he wanted nothing more than to tear this ant into a million pieces. Roar! Hung Chao threw his head back and roared. In the next moment, rays of starlight rushed out of his body and branded in all directions. Soon, 365 great stars appeared between heaven and earth. Hei Tian could not help but be shocked when he saw this. Ha ha, to be able to die under my heavenly cycle stellar killing formation, your life has not been in vain. Hung Chao laughed wildly. The star source in his body had actually attracted the power of the heavenly cycle stellar killing formation. This was something that even Jiyu Fei, who was guarding the immortal mansion world, did not expect. As soon as the heavenly cycle stellar killing formation activated the power of the 9 heaven stars, Jiyu Fei immediately sensed it. Good fellow. Jiyu Fei could not help but secretly nod. He had to admit that Hung Chao was indeed very strong. Among the quasi-supremes, he was an existence that stood at the top. Die! Hung Chao roared angrily. In the next moment, he desperately activated the heavenly cycle stellar killing formation, and the 365 great stars crushed toward Hei Tian at the same time. Ha ha! You dare to play with formations in front of me? You're courting death. Hei Tian laughed loudly. Isn't the Tao of formations my strongest ability? You want to kill me with formations? What a joke. Hung Chao suddenly felt alarmed. Today, I'll show you, a guy who thinks so highly of himself, what the real Tao of formations is. Hei Tian revealed a cold smile. In the next moment, his body shook, and countless formation patterns immediately rushed out of his body and instantly disappeared into the surrounding void. In the next moment, the 365 great stars that were crushing toward Hei Tian stopped in the void. How is this possible? At this moment, Hung Chao suddenly realized that he had lost control of the heavenly cycle stellar killing formation. Chapter 4575. Who was Hei Tian? He was the ancestor of the formation Tao. His cultivation base was unfathomable. Even the eldest prince of the eternal divine dynasty from the eternal world was like an ant in front of Hei Tian. Playing with the formation Tao in front of him was asking for it. The fact that Hei Tian had taken control of the heavenly cycle stellar killing formation from Hung Chao, the eldest prince of the eternal divine dynasty, shocked Hung Chao to the extreme. How is this possible? Is he the legendary ancestor of the formation Tao? Only the legendary ancestor of the formation Tao could easily take control of the heavenly cycle stellar killing formation from his hands. Rumble! Just as Hung Chao was about to be scared out of his wits, the heavenly cycle stellar killing formation began to operate. All 365 great stars shone with dazzling starlight. The extremely powerful power of the stars exploded, and the 365 great stars charged directly at Hung Chao. Damn it! Hung Chao exerted his mystic art with all his might. Countless formation patterns rushed out of his body and branded themselves in all directions. He wanted to regain control of the heavenly cycle stellar killing formation. Kid, you're still too inexperienced. Hei Tian smiled evilly, then took a step forward and disappeared on the spot in an instant. Without thinking, Hung Chao immediately retreated. However, it was already too late. A fist suddenly punched out from the void. Bam! Hung Chao felt his vision go black, then the world spun, and he almost fell to the ground. Hei Tian stepped forward and fought Hung Chao in close combat. Countless rays of divine light rushed out of his body. It was the light of ascension, which was almost invincible among his peers. The part of Hung Chao's body that had been cut by Hei Tian's light of ascension was still oozing blood. It would take him a few days to recover. At this time, everyone was shocked by the formation Tao combat strength that Hei Tian had displayed. This kind of combat strength could not be underestimated. Who would dare to look down on Hei Tian now? The eldest prince of the eternal divine dynasty, right? You're nothing more than this. Hei Tian kicked the eldest prince of the eternal divine dynasty, sending him flying. He kept coughing up blood. How is this possible? Hung Chao almost went crazy. Hei Tian chased after Hung Chao and stomped him down with one foot. Then, he stomped him into the ground. In front of me, Hei Tian, everything is possible. Roar. Hung Chao struggled desperately, but at this time, He Tian had already drawn the power of the 9 heaven stars to his body. No matter how hard Heng Chao struggled, he was still stepped on by He Tian. "Do you want to live or die?" He Tian said arrogantly as he looked at the eldest prince of the eternal divine dynasty under his foot. At this time, he kept the killing formation of the heavenly cycle stars. The 365 great stars disappeared into the void without a trace, as though they had never appeared in the first place. "Nonsense!" Heng Chao roared furiously. Ever since he started cultivating, when had he ever been humiliated like this? Although he wanted to live, he had the urge to self-destruct. "I say, Old Black, if you don't leave now, you won't be able to leave later." Ji Yufei's voice suddenly rang out in He Tian's mind. Sitting cross-legged in the 9th heaven of the Chaos Immortal Mansion, Ji Yufei could sense everything that was going on in the Chaos Immortal Mansion. Naturally, he had seen the battle between He Tian and Heng Chao. Right at this moment, Erebus sensed a dozen or so powerful auras rapidly approaching him. Ha, the great crown prince of the eternal divine dynasty is actually asking for help. Clearly, the eldest prince of the eternal divine dynasty had sent out a distress signal. The dozen or so experts who had come were most likely his subordinates. Heng Chao said nothing. "Let go of my prince." An old man was the first to rush to the vicinity. When he saw that the eldest prince of the eternal divine dynasty was being stepped on, he was scared out of his wits. This was the eldest prince of the eternal divine dynasty. How could he be trampled under someone's foot? At the thought of this, the old man broke out in cold sweat. If anything happened to His Highness, they would be buried with him. The old man made a move. Powerful waves of divine power surged out, and a huge golden hand appeared in the sky, grabbing at He Tian. He Tian laughed. The next moment, his body shook, and endless power of the stars erupted from his body. He didn't use the heavenly cycle star killing formation. Bam! A huge star fiercely collided with the huge golden hand that was grabbing towards it. The huge star exploded, and the force of the explosion drowned He Tian and Heng Chao. The old man who had made a move was pushed back by the mighty force. The old man was shocked. Just then, one powerful aura after another appeared in the vicinity. Heng Chao's subordinates had arrived. When they saw the high and mighty crown prince of the eternal divine dynasty being trampled to the ground, they were both shocked and enraged. Kill. A total of 13 experts attacked He Tian at the same time. Among them, there were even peak quasi-supreme cultivators. They were all old-timers. Even the void was shaken by the explosion. Ha! Good. He Tian laughed. The next moment, the 365 huge stars that had disappeared suddenly appeared in the void without warning, trapping everyone in the heavenly cycle star killing formation. What? Everyone was dumbfounded. Some of them didn't even have time to attack He Tian. Rumble, vast power of the stars erupted from He Tian's body, sending all the Tao treasures flying. Today, I'll start a massacre. Erebus seemed to have transformed into an astral god of war. Every single move he made was filled with great might. Bam! With a single punch, he directly turned a quasi-supreme being into dregs. Even his primordial spirit was scattered in the void. Heng Chao's subordinates were all shocked when they saw He Tian being so ferocious, and they hurriedly dispersed. Trapped in the heavenly cycle star killing formation, Heng Chao's underlings were extremely nervous. Moreover, this He Tian was too ferocious. He actually wanted to kill everyone. Your appetite is too big. Ji Yufei's voice sounded in He Tian's mind again. My appetite is very small. He Tian laughed. Tsk. Ji Yufei, who was sitting cross-legged in the sky, pointed his middle finger in He Tian's direction. Everyone, stop hiding. Let's attack together and kill him. Only then can we live. A black-robed middle-aged man stared at He Tian and said while gritting his teeth. His master was being stepped on by He Tian. Struggle before death. He Tian said disdainfully. Let go of my master. The black-robed middle-aged man shouted at He Tian. Do you know who my master is? He's the eldest prince of the eternal divine dynasty. If you dare to hurt my master's life, you'll be exterminated. The old man said in a low voice. Is that so? Chapter 4576. The trial of the Chaos Immortal Mansion world was still going on. However, in this trial, a great bandit had appeared. He specialized in robbing the powerful living beings from the eternal worlds. Even the powerful beings from the four worlds had been robbed by him. As a result, He Tian naturally offended many people. In particular, the creatures from the eternal world wanted nothing more than to kill He Tian. At that moment, Erebus, who was being hunted down, had defeated Heng Chao, the eldest prince of the eternal divine dynasty, and even stomped him into the ground. When Heng Chao's subordinates saw their master being stepped on, how could they stand it? Heng Chao's subordinates didn't think too much about it and directly charged at He Tian. However, just as they attacked, He Tian also made his move. He had been waiting for these guys, and he wanted to kill them all at once. What? Heng Chao's subordinates were all dumbfounded. They never thought that He Tian would actually plot against them, and even use the Heavenly Cycle Stellar Killing Formation. The Heavenly Cycle Stellar Killing Formation was His Highness the Eldest Prince's trump card. Boom! Someone directly unleashed his quasi-supreme level battle prowess, wanting to break the Heavenly Cycle Stellar Killing Formation and kill his way out. However, within the Heavenly Cycle Stellar Killing Formation, the power of the stars was vast, and one after another great star after another appeared in the void. No one could break this part of the starry sky. Let us go, or I'll wipe out your entire family. A middle-aged expert trapped in the killing formation said sternly. Don't make a mistake. Let go of my master, and we'll let bygones be bygones. Another white-haired, white-browed old man said in a low voice. Forget bygones. Who are you kidding? He Tian stepped on the Eternal Prince's foot so hard that the prince's head was stomped into the ground, and his mouth was full of mud. Let bygones be bygones, let bygones be bygones. As long as you let me go, I'll let bygones be bygones. Heng Chao spat out the mud in his mouth and said hurriedly. He had to lower his head and escape first. Can I trust you? He Tian muttered. I can trust you, I can trust you. I swear, if I find trouble with you again, I will die a horrible death. Heng Chao hurriedly swore. He Tian suddenly rolled his eyes and said with a smile, Hehe, it seems that you have some sincerity. How about this, hand over everything you have and I will spare your life. At this time, the Heavenly Cycle Stellar Killing Formation was activated, trapping Heng Chao and his subordinates within the formation. Their life and death were in the hands of He Tian. Go, 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 how could Heng Chao dare to say no at this moment? Not only did he hand over all the cultivation resources he had on him, but he also opened up his inner world and allowed Mai Tian to move everything from his inner world. In order to survive, he would even eat shit, let alone ask the eldest prince of the eternal divine dynasty to hand over all his cultivation resources. Ha ha! A wise man submits to circumstances. You are indeed the best of the best. He Tian looked at the mountains of cultivation resources in his inner world and was so happy that he almost couldn't help but hug Heng Chao and give him a kiss. As the eldest prince of the eternal divine dynasty, Heng Chao had access to a plethora of cultivation resources. He had all kinds of rare divine metal and divine herb kings that were billions of years old. He Tian had even obtained 2 quasi-immortal divine medicines from the depths of Heng Chao's inner world. These quasi-immortal divine medicines were divine medicines that could even be used by supremes. Additionally, those were all cultivation resources from Eternal World. Compared to the cultivation resources from other worlds, it was only natural that the quality of the cultivation resources here was the best. After robbing the eldest prince of the Eternal Divine Dynasty, He Tian had more capital to break through to the extreme Tao. And all of you, hand over all your cultivation resources. He Tian did not hold back. There were as many as 12 of Heng Chao's subordinates trapped in the killing formation of the Heavenly Cycle Stars. Although they were Heng Chao's subordinates, they definitely had a lot of cultivation resources. They were dumbfounded. You don't want to hand them over? Then you can all go to hell. He Tian didn't want to waste his breath and was about to attack. Don't. Young man, don't be impulsive. When those people saw that He Tian was about to attack, they were all shocked. Even their master, the Crown Prince, was not a match for this madman, so they were even less of a match for him. Heng Chao's subordinates no longer hesitated. They all handed over their cultivation resources and opened their inner worlds for He Tian to inspect. Seeing Erebus rob them of their cultivation resources, these people's hearts were bleeding. They were different from the eldest prince of the eternal divine dynasty. Those were the cultivation resources that they had accumulated for a lifetime, but they were robbed just like that. They had worked hard for a lifetime, but in the end, they had helped someone else. Moreover, they had no choice but to hand them over, because no one wanted to die. He Tian really can't change his nature. Ji Yufei, who was sitting cross-legged in the sky and overseeing the Chaos Immortal Mansion, couldn't help but laugh when he saw this scene. This was He Tian. No matter who you were, even if you were the son of the emperor, he would still rob you. Just then, Ji Yufei suddenly sensed two extremely powerful auras erupting from a large lake in the east of the Chaos Immortal Mansion. With a thought, he sensed everything there. He saw two figures standing on the surface of the lake. Two experts were facing each other, and the pressure from their bodies was constantly rising. One of the experts was an acquaintance, and the other was a masked woman from the eternal world. She was dressed in a fluttering white robe. Do you understand the concept of first come, first served? I saw the violet lotus of enlightenment first, so it should belong to me. The purple-clad Qin Yarrow stared at the woman in white and said coldly, "What do you mean by first come, first served? I only believe in strength. The violet lotus of enlightenment belongs to whoever's fist is harder." The woman in white was incomparably domineering. Haha, very well. In that case, there's nothing more to say. Let's fight. The pressure from Qin Yarrow's body continued to rise as if there was no end to it. Beam after beam of divine light rushed out of her body and circled around her. A Tao diagram of yin and yang emerged from her body. However, the aura of the white-robed woman in front of Qin Yarrow was no weaker than Qin Yarrow. Behind the white-robed woman, there seemed to be a boundless ocean connected to it. Boundless water Tao energy surged out of her body, and the entire world seemed to be surging. Qin Yarrow cultivated the great Tao of yin and yang, while the woman in white cultivated the great Tao of water. The two of them were already at the quasi-supreme stage. Both of them wanted to take another step forward to become a true extreme supreme. However, it was very difficult for Qin Yarrow to take that step forward. The woman in white also wanted to take that step forward. However, compared to Qin Yarrow, it was easier for her. She did not have the suppression from her supreme bloodline. Interesting. The battle between Qin Yarrow and the woman in white attracted Ji Yufei's attention. One of them was the daughter of Grand Emperor Yin Yang, while the other was an expert from the eternal world. Chapter 4577. The trial within the Chaos Immortal Mansion continued. Due to the participation of the cultivators from Eternal World, Ji Yufei decided to extend the end of the trial indefinitely. In other words, if he wanted to stop the trial, it would stop. If he did not, it would continue. There were plenty of divine herbs and materials within the Chaos Immortal Mansion. There was even the undying peach tree. There was no need to worry about a lack of participants. Additionally, the trial was no longer just a fight between the four quasi-supremes. Now, the mysterious and unfathomable cultivators from Eternal World had arrived as well. Although the cultivators from Eternal World were also quasi-supremes, the heavenly Tao of their world was stronger than that of any other world. Their grand Tao had gone through countless years of evolution and was already near the strongest and most complete. Compared to Eternal World, the grand Tao of the human world, celestial plane, primogenitor realm and primogenitor realm was still immature. That was the difference between a child and an adult. In the eyes of the cultivators from Eternal World, Ji Yuling, He Tian, and the others were just a bunch of bumpkins. At that moment, the calm surface of a great lake in the eastern region of the Chaos Immortal Mansion rose up with towering waves. The entire lake seemed to be boiling. Some of the powerful cultivators hiding at the bottom of the lake were alarmed. However, in the face of the two peak-level quasi-supremes, the powerful cultivators at the bottom of the lake trembled in fear. Ji Yufei, who was seated cross-legged above the 9 heavens of the Chaos Immortal Mansion, was feeling curious as well. Who exactly was the stronger of the two experts who were confronting each other on the lake? Wang. Space shook and the waves on the surface of the lake suddenly stopped. The surface of the lake became as still as a mirror, a stark contrast to the towering waves earlier. Kill. Qin Yarrow was the first to attack. Rays of light transformed from the yin-yang divine diagram slashed towards the white-robed woman. Wherever the rays of light passed, ripples would appear in the void. This was the power of the Grand Tao. Qin Yarrow's cultivation of the Grand Tao of yin-yang had reached a bottleneck. It was already near perfection. One more step and she would reach the pinnacle of the Tao. However, Qin Yarrow's attempt to break through to the pinnacle of the Tao was far more difficult. She was the daughter of the Yin-Yang Emperor and possessed his supreme bloodline. The Yin-Yang Emperor's Tao had been passed down to Qin Yarrow through her bloodline. The Tao that came from the Yin-Yang Great Emperor did not belong to Qin Yarrow. Before reaching the extreme Tao realm, the Yin-Yang Great Emperor's Tao was of great help to Qin Yarrow's cultivation. However, when Qin Yarrow's cultivation reached the quasi-supremacy stage, the Yin-Yang Emperor's Tao would suppress Qin Yarrow's Tao. The difficulty of breaking through such a great emperor's Tao was unimaginable. Humph. Child's play. The woman in white sneered. In the next moment, she waved her right hand and a pillar of water shot up from the surface of the lake. Following her gesture, the pillar of water instantly turned into a water blade and slashed forward. Swoosh. Saber chi swept out in all directions, instantly destroying all the yin-yang light blades that were slashing towards her. The saber intent of this saber. When Ji Yufei, who was sitting cross-legged in the sky, saw this scene, he couldn't help but be startled. The woman in white's water blade was no trifling matter. After the woman in white's water blade broke through Qin Yarrow's yin-yang light blades, its momentum did not diminish. It continued to slash towards Qin Yarrow. Moreover, its power grew stronger and stronger, drawing in all the water elemental energy in the world. Qin Yarrow couldn't help but be startled when she saw this saber. The opponent's saber had locked onto her. No matter how she dodged, the opponent's saber would follow her like a shadow. I can only go all out. Qin Yarrow took a deep breath. In the next moment, a dazzling yin-yang divine light erupted from her body. Her entire body disappeared within the yin-yang divine light. In just an instant, Qin Yarrow had turned into a yin-yang Tao diagram. Qin Yarrow's body turned into a yin-yang Tao diagram and directly met the opponent's water blade. The woman in white saber light was directly absorbed by Qin Yarrow's yin-yang Tao diagram. The woman in white frowned. This lowly creature from the lower realms was actually able to block my saber. This water blade technique, in the sect that the woman in white came from, wasn't considered a profound supernatural ability. However, it was still considered a superior cultivation method. Qin Yarrow had so easily broken through this water blade technique. This was something that the woman in white never imagined. Could it be that I have underestimated these people? The woman in white couldn't help but be moved. Wang. The yin-yang Tao diagram trembled. In an instant, it became as large as a mountain. A heaven-swallowing strength came crashing down from the yin-yang Tao diagram, causing ripples to appear in the void. The woman in white was startled. In the next moment, she involuntarily flew towards the yin-yang Tao diagram that fell from the sky. Roar. The woman in white roared. Water elemental energy immediately condensed in her hand. In the next moment, she slashed at the yin-yang Tao diagram that Qin Yarrow had transformed into. However, Qin Yarrow's supernatural ability was no trifling matter. The yin-yang Tao diagram revolved and could swallow everything. As the woman in white's sword approached the yin-yang Tao diagram, it disappeared once more. It was very sudden, as if the yin-yang Tao diagram was connected to an endless world. The yin-yang Tao diagram could swallow everything. Swoosh. The yin-yang Tao diagram that Qin Yarrow transformed into cut towards the woman in white. The great Taos of yin and yang wove together on the Tao diagram. Countless Tao patterns bloomed with the most devastating light. Humph. The woman in white coldly sneered. She slashed out with her saber again. Endless saber energy surged out, forcefully blocking the yin-yang Tao diagram. Seeing this, Qin Yarrow had no choice but to retreat. For a time, the two powerhouses were unable to deal with each other. As for the lake beneath their feet, It was directly destroyed by the vast fluctuations of energy. On a mountain beside the lake, there was a pond at the peak of the mountain. There was a purple lotus of enlightenment, and the corpse of a savage beast the size of a small mountain lay less than 10 jong away from the purple lotus of enlightenment. Fresh blood seeped out from the savage beast's body, and the air was filled with the smell of blood. A fellow sneakily crept up from the foot of the mountain and slowly walked towards the pond. He was very careful, because he didn't want to alarm the two powerhouses above the lake. It had to be known that either one of them was a quasi-supreme being. Below the supreme being level, they were invincible existences. If he were to alarm them, then he would likely be in deep trouble. These two were both peerless geniuses of heaven. Either one of them was an existence that could shake an entire region. He couldn't afford to offend either of them, so he could only stealthily steal away the purple enlightenment lotus. Chapter 4578. Within the world of the primal chaos immortal mansion, battles were erupting everywhere. Tong Yu, the original master of the immortal mansion world, had laid out countless schemes for the sake of gathering the life essence of countless living beings, turning the entire world into a supreme killing trap. In order to lure those supreme experts into the immortal mansion world, he had hidden all the natural treasures, cultivation methods, and Tao artifacts he had gathered over countless years. If one wanted to obtain natural treasures, supreme cultivation methods, and powerful Tao artifacts, they would have to pay a price. And that price was one's life. Since ancient times, the primal chaos immortal mansion world had appeared countless times, harvesting the lives of countless experts. Of course, there were also some small fry that Tong Yu had let go. It had to be known that if not many people succeeded in obtaining rare treasures or supreme cultivation methods, the immortal mansion world would lose its allure to everyone. After all, if one knew they would die, who would still venture into the immortal mansion world? Those experts who had ventured into the immortal mansion world, only to perish inside and become nourishment for Tong Yu, had only gone in with the slightest hope of success. At this time, the great lake at the foot of the mountain had been blasted apart by Qin Yarrow and the white-clothed woman. Beam after beam of terrifying destructive light shot out from the bottom of the lake, piercing directly towards Qin Yarrow and the white-clothed woman. Suppress. The white-clothed woman used a supreme divine technique, forcibly gathering the water essence of heaven and earth, transforming it into a giant seal. The seal instantly took shape, radiating boundless light. Within each ray of divine light, countless Tao patterns could be faintly seen. Rumble, a watermark directly suppressed downwards, forcibly suppressing the destructive light that was piercing towards her. Your killing formation seems a bit weak, Ji Yu Fei said to Tong Yu, who was overlooking the entire primal chaos immortal mansion world. Tong Yu's current appearance was that of a 12-year-old child. He was a bit embarrassed. The violet lotus of enlightenment isn't some kind of rare divine medicine. It's not a big deal to let them get it. The killing formation that Tong Yu had set up around the violet lotus of enlightenment wasn't that heaven-defying, but it wasn't something that just anyone could break. The violet lotus of enlightenment wasn't very useful to quasi-supremes, because it could help them comprehend the Tao. However, quasi-supremes' Taos were already almost perfect. It was impossible to break through to the extreme grade just by eating the enlightenment purple lotus. Even the immortal spiritual medicine was not that heaven-defying. The extreme Tao was no longer something that could be created by some heaven-defying divine medicine or some supreme being. One could only rely on oneself. Only by taking that step could one's Tao be perfected. However, the purple lotus of enlightenment could help a person become a saint and create a saint. Even in eternal world, this divine herb was very rare. The violet lotus of enlightenment within the immortal pond on the mountain was the mother plant. By carefully nurturing it, it could grow into a large field. In this way, those who mastered the purple lotus of enlightenment would be able to create a large number of sages. This was the value of the purple lotus of enlightenment. However, very few people knew the true value of the violet lotus of the Tao. Only the top forces in eternal world possessed the methods to nurture the various divine herbs. The sect that the white-robed woman belonged to had the method to grow the purple lotus of enlightenment. Naturally, The white-robed woman would not let go of a divine herb capable of creating a large number of sages. Even the sages created through the use of divine herbs were still sages. Naturally, the sages created through the use of this divine herb could not be compared to the sages created through their own efforts. However, if they could create an army of sages, they would be able to sweep through even eternal world. It was then that the white-robed woman revealed her secret art. Using the power of water, she condensed out a great seal to suppress the power of the killing array coming from the lake. At the same time, Qin Yao, who had transformed into the yin-yang Dao diagram, furiously devoured the destructive light coming at her. The two secret arts were polar opposites. One devoured while the other suppressed. On the surface, the white-robed woman gave off a majestic air of majesty, like a peerless goddess of war. However, Qin Yao, on the other hand, was gathering power. The yin-yang Dao diagram was capable of absorbing energy from all directions for her own use. Thus, the more Qin Yao fought, the stronger she became. Even when fighting against experts on the same level as her, she would often end up the victor. In fact, some of those who were stronger than Qin Yao would end up being exhausted to death by Qin Yao. Kill. The white-robed woman put away the water seal and clenched her fists. An extremely domineering aura immediately erupted from her body. Let me show you what the martial extreme divine fist is. There was a hint of disdain in the white-robed woman's voice. The next moment, she punched out, causing the entire world to shake. It was as though a primordial war beast had awakened from its slumber. This is. Qin Yao sensed an extreme sense of danger from the white-robed woman. Even Ji Yufei, who was sitting cross-legged in the ninth heaven and overlooking the battle, had his eyes lit up. Was this an eternal combat skill? He was once an eternal one and had created an eternal combat skill. However, the martial extreme divine fist displayed by the white-robed woman was the pinnacle of a different kind of martial arts. Eternal World also has a martial arts legacy. When Ji Yufei thought of this, he could not help but feel shocked. He recalled many things. Above the myriad heavens, there was the primal world and the primal world. However, there was actually a world above the primal world. Could it be that the cultivation legacies of the primal world came from eternal world? Could it be that the source of everything was in eternal world? Ji Yufei knew that the truth would only come to light after he entered eternal world. Who? At this moment, the white-robed woman had already punched at Qin Yao. In an instant, Ji Yufei seemed to see countless stars and suns shattering under the white-robed woman's fist. It was as though the entire world had been pierced by this fist. The fist could shatter stars and suppress the universe. This was a kind of fist intent. It was a different kind of display of the true power of this fist technique. Right now, the white-robed woman only had the cultivation base of a quasi-supreme. It was impossible for her to display the true power of the martial extreme divine fist. However, even if she could only display 1/10,000th of the martial extreme divine fist's power, she would still be invincible among those of the same level. Roar! Qin Yao roared. Her hair danced in the wind and her entire body fused with the yin-yang Dao diagram. She circulated the yin-yang secret technique with all her might, wanting to devour the white-robed woman into her yin-yang world. However, the moment Qin Yao's yin-yang Dao diagram came into contact with the white-robed woman's fist, the yin-yang Dao diagram collapsed in the void. It was just one punch, but Qin Yao's divine body was pierced through. She was sent flying hundreds of thousands of li away. Her divine body was nearly destroyed by the white-robed woman's punch. Even Ji Yufei was stunned by this result. This fist technique has such power. Ji Yufei could not help but be shocked. Chapter 4579. The white-robed woman had defeated Qin Yao with a single punch. Many of the spectators were dumbfounded. How is that possible? That's the little princess of the Qin clan. How could she be defeated with a single punch? She's the daughter of the yin-yang great emperor. She shouldn't have been defeated so thoroughly. Those who knew Qin Yao's background couldn't believe it. However, the elegance of the white-robed woman's punch had won everyone's admiration. This kind of fist technique had already surpassed the limits of all moves. Even Tong Yu, a half-step eternal existence, could only see some clues from the fist intent of this punch. The others, even the extreme Dao Supremes, found it difficult to comprehend anything from the punch that the white-robed woman threw out. Only Ji Yu Fei was able to see through the true power of the white-robed woman's punch. This was an eternal grade martial path battle skill, and it was displayed by a quasi-supreme like the white-robed woman. Although its power was less than 1/10,000th, it was still not something that Qin Yarou could contend with. One must know that even Qin Yarou's father, the invincible Yin-Yang Emperor who had once dominated the 9 heavens, only had the cultivation of an extreme supreme being. Extreme grade great arts and eternal grade battle skills were simply not on the same level. There was simply no comparison. Qin Yarou and the white-robed woman were both quasi-supreme. In a battle of the same level, eternal grade battle skills would crush extreme grade great arts. This was inevitable. Aborigines will always be aborigines. I just got a little serious, and you can't take it anymore. How boring. The white-robed woman was very disdainful. She turned around and was about to take the purple lotus of enlightenment. What did you say? Qin Yarou's cold voice came from afar. A powerful killing intent instantly locked onto the white-robed woman. Do you really want to die? The white-robed woman looked indifferently at Qin Yarou, who was walking over step by step. The current Qin Yarou was in an extremely sorry state. Her hair was a mess, and blood was oozing from the corner of her mouth. There was a bloody hole in her chest, from which blood was constantly dripping. In particular, there were streams of intertwining great Dao energy on the wound, like lightning. That was the white-robed woman's great Dao energy attached to Qin Yarou's wound, cutting off her vitality. This kind of great Dao injury was not so easy to heal. Do you really think you can defeat me? Qin Yarou smiled gently. When she was sent flying by the white-robed woman's punch, a strand of soul sense descended from the sky and directly entered her soul. At that moment, countless pieces of information surged into her sea of consciousness. Figures appeared one after another in her sea of consciousness, displaying a supreme battle skill to her. Heaven transformation hand? Qin Yarou understood in an instant, and she was pleasantly surprised. My successor is no weaker than anyone else. A voice sounded in her mind. Master. Qin Yarou was overjoyed. This was Ji Yu Fei's voice. Although she had taken Yang as her master, she could also be considered as Ji Yu Fei's successor. At this time, Ji Yu Fei passed on a supreme battle skill to her. The Heaven Transformation Hand was said to be able to transform the heavens, and its might was many times stronger than his yin-yang secret art. This kind of direct transmission could allow Qin Yarou to grasp the basics of this battle skill. It should be said that this kind of transmission from Ji Yu Fei had also passed on his experience and comprehension of this battle skill. You don't know the meaning of death. In that case, I will send you on your way. As soon as the white-clothed woman punched out, a domineering power immediately erupted. The surrounding void shook violently and ripples of space spread out in all directions with her as the center. The martial divine fist was truly a heaven-defying battle skill. Just the fist momentum alone was enough to cause the weather to change. If this fist were to be unleashed, wouldn't it be able to destroy the world? The martial divine fist is truly worthy of being the martial extreme immortal sect's sect-guarding battle skill. Some experts from the eternal world who were watching the battle could not help but exclaim when they saw this. If the martial extreme immortal sect's martial divine fist was used by an eternal existence, it would certainly suppress the 9 heavens. The fist could shake the universe and destroy the world. It was not impossible. We don't know who will send who on their way yet. Qin Yarou chuckled. She stared at the white-robed woman, and the aura on her body rapidly changed. Boom. In the next instant, a towering might burst out from Qin Yarou's body. She assumed a pose and a terrifying domain instantly formed. All the worldly spiritual energy gathered towards the domain. Qin Yarou was devouring all the worldly essence, seemingly wanting to devour the entire world. This is. Seeing this, the white-robed woman's eyes involuntarily narrowed. An eternal battle skill? She could not help but feel shocked. She had never imagined that the other party would also possess an eternal battle skill. Furthermore, judging by the might of the skill, It seemed to be in no way inferior to her martial divine fist. How was this possible? How could a mere aborigine possess an eternal battle skill? Eternal tier combat skills, cultivation techniques, or secret techniques? Even in Eternal World, they were the secret techniques of the various clans, sects that were not to be divulged. Only the heir disciples of the various clans and sects would be taught them. Moreover, heir disciples were absolutely not allowed to divulge the sect's secret techniques to others. Not even their own sons were allowed to do so, unless they had the sect's permission. If they were to divulge the sect's secret techniques without permission, the consequences would be extremely dire. One hand to transform the heavens. Qin Yarrow made her move. The endless worldly spiritual energy gathered by the heaven form domain rapidly converged, and a huge hand appeared in the void, slapping towards the white-robed woman. Rumble, everything in the path of the huge hand was obliterated and all the power in its path was melted away. Roar. The white-robed woman roared furiously. Her long hair fluttered in the wind as she unleashed a punch at the incoming huge hand. This was Wu Jishan from the martial extreme immortal sect in the Eternal World. As the white-robed woman unleashed her punch, the entire world shook. To be able to shake the entire world, the white-robed woman's fist energy had reached an unimaginable level. It had to be said that this world was incomparably stable. Ordinary quasi-supremes would not be able to shake the primal chaos immortal mansion world. At that moment, even Ji Yufei felt somewhat nervous. The eternal battle skill he had created, the heaven form hand to the opponent's martial divine fist. Which of the two was stronger? Boom. The heaven form hand that Qin Yarrow unleashed collided against the white-robed woman's divine fist of martial divine fist, resulting in a world-shaking boom. A massive black hole was blasted out from the collision. A terrifying aura of devastation spread out in every direction. Even the countless experts who were watching the battle from the side sensed extreme danger, and they had no choice but to run far away. Those two. Everyone there was incomparably shocked.